Trace the primal light. Let the clouds heal me at the states. Till me with the sorrow of my life. I dream.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is going to be Tech Thursdays, episode 123. Yes, episode 123. This is going to be the Gamescom Tech Thursday special because this is the week of Gamescom. For some reason, I thought that it was actually the following week, but it is happening this week in Germany. So that is where a lot of the tech press is right now. That's where a lot of the gaming press is right now. So we're going to go ahead and start things off with one of the latest GPUs that was announced at the show. That is the ROG Matrix. Yes, the Asus Matrix is finally back in action. If you guys know anything about Asus, you know that the Matrix is their highest end graphics card. This is the flagship of flagship graphics cards. It has been a long time since I have seen the Asus Matrix GPU.
My X870 Doglike from February 2025 now experiencing screen reset after upgrade from AMD GPU to 5090 FE. Can this affect performance in any fashion?
That doesn't affect performance, but are you having the problem where the display on the Godlike disconnects and reconnects? I had the exact same problem. You have to do an RMA. You have to do an RMA. That's the only thing you can do. I literally did the RMA a few weeks ago, and MSI sent me the replacement, and now I actually have the newer Easy Bridge for some reason, like the new hardware revision. We're going to talk about that on the stream, though. So that is a great segue that will lead into the motherboard discussion, because we are going to talk about motherboards this live stream, because there were a lot of motherboards shown off at the Gamescom show this week, including some from MSI. So we're going to talk about that. But yeah, to fix your problem, you're going to have to contact MSI, and you're going to have to do an RMA. That is the only way to fix it. Unfortunate as that sounds, that's the only way. The way you can rule it out is turn off the computer, remove the Easy Bridge, the dynamic dashboard, turn the computer back on, and you'll notice that the disconnect reconnect thing no longer happens. The other thing you can do is you can download something called USB Log View, and USB Log View will show you the device ID that's disconnecting and reconnecting, and that is the Easy Bridge. So yeah, that's the only thing. You're going to have to do an RMA. That's the only way. All right, so it's always a feels bad when that happens, but the MSI Godlike, unfortunately, there was a lot of issues with that motherboard. We've documented several of them on this channel earlier this year, particularly late last year, but it is, MSI has addressed it though, so it is very easy to do the RMA. They're not going to ask a lot of questions. They're going to ask you, are you on the latest BIOS? Are you on the latest firmware? If the answer is yes and yes, and you're having the problem, they're going to do the RMA. That's basically how that goes. Okay, so the Asus Matrix GeForce RTX 5090 is their new flagship graphics card. So this thing reminds me, so the design of this graphics card reminds me of the old Radeon graphics cards from ATI. Does anybody here remember the ATI Radeon 1950 XTX? This looks like a 1950 XTX. So if we go here, we type in 1950 XTX. It looks a lot like this thing. This is the thing that it reminded me of. It's got that round shape around that outer fan. For some reason, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, this looks like, this might be like AMD's new flagship card because it looks like a Team Red graphics card. But no, it's a 5090. It's a 5090. But basically what this is, for those that don't know, this is literally just a modified Astral. It's literally the Astral. They've just reshaped the shroud so that it's less square and more like circular, angular. So it's technically smaller than the Astral, but it is a very heavy graphics card, just like the Astral. They also put like a curved RGB screen along the side of the Let me see if I can get a picture of it or something. Let me see. Do we got any gallery pictures of it? Yeah. So they went and they have this infinity mirror design on the outer curved perimeter of that outer fan. So it is a very unique looking design, but it reminds me of those old AMD, well, not AMD. This would have been before AMD. This would have been like ATI. It reminds you of those old ATI graphics cards from like the mid 2000s. That's what it looks like. The Matrix is Asus's highest end product though. Anything from Asus that says Matrix means that it's the top of the line. There's nothing that goes beyond the Matrix. It's been a long time since I've had a Matrix card. I do have one Asus Matrix card. I have the HD 7970. Let me see if I can find it. Too many requests. How's that too many requests? I'm not a robot. HD 7970. Let's go here. So I have, where is it? It's an Asus card. Asus. They don't have it on here? Matrix? Oh, probably because I didn't do Gigahertz edition. Well, anyway, I have an Asus Matrix Platinum. Asus HD 7970 Matrix Platinum. Here it is. Yeah, this card. So this is my Asus Matrix. This is like the last card from Asus that I had that had the Matrix brand. Back in like 2013 was when I had this card. Well, I still have the card. I even have a video on how to fix the flaky artifacting memory. But yeah, this card was a very, very high-end card back in the day. You can see this is a card from like 12, 13 years ago. The VRM. It did not cover 4 memory modules though. So Asus doesn't do that anymore, but because they didn't cover all 4 memory. Anyway, we're way off track. Anyway, so the point is the Matrix is their highest end offering. Everything else that that's an Asus graphics card is going to be underneath this card in the hierarchy. This is the flagship of flagships. So this will be the highest end 5090 on the market. One thing to note about it is unique in that it requires BTF. Now, I think it can work without a BTF motherboard. However, it will be limited to 600 watt TDP unless you have a BTF motherboard, because this graphics card is capable of 800 watts power draw. Like the TDP is, I don't know how, this to me doesn't look like it's good enough to cool 800 watts, to be honest. But, because this is literally just a modified Astral cooler. In fact, it's a little bit smaller than the Astral. At best, it's identical to the Astral in terms of the size of the cooler. But the additional 200 watts is concerning. However, they're utilizing the BTF connector. So it is basically a dual power connector GPU. So you have the infamous 12 volt high power connector on the side here. It's covered up by a little latch thing. And then it has the BTF power connector on the back. It's okay, here we go. So right here, let me see if it zoom in, does it work? No, it doesn't work. So this right here, this little connector here is the BTF power connector. So it pulls power from there, from the motherboard, and then it also pulls power through the typical, that infamous cable that everybody hates, that NVIDIA and Dell came up with. So yeah, it uses that. So it's kind of like those rare Galaxy Hall of Fame cards that there's like a few of those that exist. It's kind of like that. This is the 30th anniversary edition. This, to be honest, just kind of came out of nowhere. I was not expecting Asus to do this. If anything, I was expecting the Matrix to be a liquid-cooled card. But because if it was 800 watts with a liquid 360 watt AIO, a 360 AIO would have been good for this. I don't really know what the temperatures are going to be like with 800 watts going through this card. To me, it'll probably barely handle it, but it'll probably be loud when it's pulling 800 watts. Like all 4 fans will be going full blast. But yeah, that is a really nice looking GPU. I'll be honest, I really like this GPU. I like the look of it. I always like that rounded look. Like I said before, it reminds me of those old those old Radeon cards from the mid 2000s. And it's kind of like they're drawing inspiration from that older style that doesn't really exist anymore. Those older blower style cards actually is what this is inspired from, I can tell. So that is that. Gamescom showed off a bunch of interesting games. Well, I guess we'll talk about games in the second half of the stream, unless you guys want to talk about the games now. The one that really stuck out to me was the Resident Evil Requiem. So Capcom, for those of you that may or may not know, Capcom utilizes their own proprietary engine, the RE engine. We'll probably talk about this later, but Resident Evil Requiem is getting a full path traced mode. So they're going full path trace. They're going to prove to people the correct way to do path tracing using their RE engine. So Resident Evil Requiem is looking like it's going to be probably one of the best looking games of next year when it comes out, and that is RE engine. So let's see. In other news, we were talking about the Godlike earlier. So MSI announced a bunch of new motherboards. The MSI lineup has been refreshed from the Gamescom show. Leading the pack is going to be the new Godlike X edition. So the Godlike X is going to be the flagship of flagship motherboards. This will replace the existing Godlike. And one of the things that MSI claims they have upgraded is the actual display. So the Easy Bridge, those of you that may or may not be aware, the first Godlike, so the existing Godlike, is prone to having all kinds of failures with the display, that it's a magnetically attached display here on the upper right hand side. I'm circling it here with the mouse. That thing is prone to failing. So MSI has since supposedly they have corrected the problem with a new hardware revision of the Dynamic Dashboard 3. So this motherboard, the X edition, includes a brand new dynamic dashboard that is on a newer hardware revision. So all those issues with the disconnect, reconnect, where you have to do an RMA, or the display gets messed up and the characters are all scrambled looking, and yeah, that is supposed to be resolved with the X edition. So that's supposed to fix that. In addition to that, the BIOS, this motherboard, I believe the Godlike, features dual BIOS, and each one of those BIOS chips are 64 megabytes. That means that they can potentially put more stuff in the UEFI. Typically, it means that they can get like a better graphical interface. It looks more unique. They can do like animations and things. People may not care about that, but that's pretty much what it means. That's what it enables them to do. Because feature-wise, it's not going to be anything that different from the previous motherboards from MSI. But not only the Godlike is getting a new version, they're also introducing the long-awaited Ace. You can see it here. It is the third one here, so the second one from the right. So you have on the left, you have the Tomahawk Max. Then you have I believe the white one is the Edge in white. Then you have the Ace, and it looks like the Ace is getting a display infinity mirror or something on the I/O shroud. It looks like it has the dragon there. And then on the right-hand side, you have the Carbon Max. So you have an MAG, a MAG. I think this is an MPG, an MEG, and an MPG on the right. And they've got some other stuff here for like other things like cases and things. So they did do their virtual premiere event. The guys from MSI Insider, one of them was presenting this, and then the other one, he was presenting at the 2-hour live stream. For anyone who was tuning into the MSI YouTube channel, you guys would have seen all the new hardware that they showed off at the show. And overall, I feel like MSI had a big splash this year at Gamescom. Asus and MSI both. But MSI is definitely... I feel like MSI's focus was definitely more on the PC enthusiasts, the people who are looking to build computers, Whereas I think Asus was showing off more like peripherals and accessories and things like headphones and keyboards and pre-built cases and things like that. So it kind of depends on what you are interested in, depending on if you're building a computer or if you're looking to just upgrade parts of a computer. Both of them had things to show off. I did not see anything from ASRock, which was a little bit confusing to me because back at Computex back in May, ASRock had shown off a bunch of new motherboards. There was an overclocking 2DIMM motherboard from ASRock that was shown off at that show. I was expecting to see that here, but I haven't seen or heard anything about the ASRock motherboard lineup. And then Gigabyte, I have not heard anything either from them. So I think it was pretty much MSI and Asus. I know MSI has a pretty strong marketing team in Europe, in the EU in general. And for those that don't know, there used to be a show in America dedicated to gaming, a convention called E3, if any of you remember what E3 was or is back in the day. E3 was the largest gaming industry trade show on the planet, and it would take place right around the time that Computex takes place now. So unfortunately, E3 kind of fell by the wayside. They tried to revive it, then the pandemic happened, and then I think the pandemic like literally killed it off permanently. So unfortunately, there's no big American trade show anymore for the gaming industry. So that leaves the European Union to pick up the slack with Gamescom. So Gamescom has actually become the world's largest gaming show now. Like, because of E3 going away, it was up to Gamescom, and then the other one is TGS, the Tokyo Game Show, which will be taking place a month from now. So Gamescom is always in August, and the Tokyo Game Show is always in September. So just for those who don't know, if you want to keep track with gaming industry news, the biggest shows are going to be Gamescom for the EU and TGS for the Asia Pacific region, particularly Japan's gaming market. So those are the two. So we got Gamescom this week. TGS is next month, so we'll be looking at that as well. And yeah, I would say MSI in particular has a pretty good marketing team in the EU. Like, they have some strong marketing presence. They have good people that are able to explain the MSI product line very well from MSI. So they've got good representation at Gamescom this year. So definitely check out the recording of the virtual event if you want to see all the different products that were shown off. However, what I want to focus on here is the motherboards. Unfortunately, they don't have the product pages. I was trying to look for the product page for the Godlike X and the Carbon Max and the Ace, in particular the Ace, because the Ace is a motherboard that we've been waiting for a very long time, and it does exist, and it is coming out. So all these motherboards are launching next month. So I guess they might be shown off at TGS again, but TGS doesn't really seem to be as focused on PC gamers. It definitely seems more focused to mobile and the live service style games, because the Japanese game market is definitely heavily tilted toward mobile gaming these days, which is unfortunate. But, like, Nintendo has a big presence there, and so does Sony. So we may see, like, AAA stuff. Sony might announce some stuff at the TGS show, but I think what we saw at Gamescom kind of is going to cater to the enthusiast crowd that likes high-fidelity graphics and those type of games. So that's why Resident Evil Requiem, Ninja Gaiden 4, there was a bunch of other ones. Capcom actually had a really big showing this year. A lot of the industry analysts got to participate in the Capcom private demo thing where they got to play 3 games behind the scenes. They got to experience Resident Evil Requiem, Onimusha, and I think Onimusha Way of the Sword, and the third game was Pragmata, and the other two, yeah. So I don't know if Pragmata is RE Engine, but the other two are definitely RE Engine. They look very RE Engine, and one of them in particular, Resident Evil Requiem, is going to feature a full path tracing mode. So you can turn full path tracing on, and according to Digital Foundry, path tracing when you run RE Engine with full path tracing enabled, it seems to fix a lot of the graphical drawbacks that have kind of cropped up with RE Engine in recent years. We've seen this with Monster Hunter Wilds earlier this year. We saw this with Dragon's Dogma last year. And then we saw, I guess, to some extent, with the previous Resident Evil games like Resident Evil 4 Remake, Resident Evil Village, etc. It's funny because when RE Engine first debuted back in like 2017 with Resident Evil 7, it looked really, really good. But that's because we were living in a PlayStation 4 era, and a lot of those games, you know, they just, on PS4 hardware, they're going to look really, really good. So let me see if I can find anything on that, but we may have to, like, do an actual Google search or something. Resident Evil Requiem. These guys don't have any story on this from, like, the last few days. Why? Okay, Gamescom. Yeah, this, do they not have anything? Gamescom 2025, do they have any stories? They've got the Godlike. They've got something about FSR. Ghost of Yotei. Silent Hill F. Oh yeah, Silent Hill F is another game. That's coming out this year. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that was really impressive is coming out next year. The ones that look really good that are coming out this year would be Silent Hill F, Metal Gear Solid, and Ninja Gaiden 4. Ninja Gaiden 4 is going to be that Unreal Engine game that needs to hit high frame rate. You're thinking about both Ace and Godlike X? Are their new MSI boards better than our X870 motherboard? What's our X870 motherboard? Which one? So the MSI motherboards, unfortunately, they don't have their product pages. One thing that they did say, though, is that the Godlike comes with all this stuff. So the Godlike X, actually, there's only one, there's 2 or 3 things that I noticed that's different compared to the original Godlike. So the first thing that I noticed is the Godlike X edition includes Lucky the Dragon, a black Lucky the Dragon plushie. So it comes with that. You don't get that on the regular Godlike. The other thing that's different is obviously the graphic animations on the displays are different, slightly different from the original. The expander card has some gold sprinkles on it and a gold line here. That's not on the original. The original one is fully black. And the same thing with the fan hub thing. I forgot what they call this, the Easy Bridge, or it's got some kind of name. But anyway, it doesn't have the yellow line. This one has the yellow line. That's pretty much the only thing. So the Lucky the Dragon is really the only thing. I was like, oh man, this one comes with the Lucky the Dragon plushie. The other one, the original, didn't have that. So that's something that's different. Otherwise, nothing else is different. The Godlike and the Godlike X have the exact same feature set. They have the exact same capabilities. That's the only thing that's different. You get Lucky the Dragon in black. That's the only thing different that you do not get with the original Godlike. Now, with the Ace, what is this? Oh, that's the fan hub thing. Oh, yeah. You get a special motherboard stand. It comes, not only does it come with Lucky the Dragon. Where's Lucky the Dragon? It comes with Lucky the Dragon. You get Lucky the Dragon. You also get a stand. You get a stand for motherboards. So you can put it on display. So you get a stand and you get Lucky the Dragon. That's pretty much it, though. Like, those are the 2 things that are different. The nice thing about the Ace, according to the marketing material, supposedly the Ace supports 2 Gen 5 SSDs, which means it has bandwidth sharing with USB 4 on the second one, just like the Godlike and the Tomahawk. That remains to be seen. I'll have to verify that, but they don't have their product page up, so I can't verify that on this episode of Tech Thursdays, unfortunately. But yeah, if you want the Black Dragon, you're going to have to get the Godlike X. I wonder what this thing is gonna go for, like, on eBay, because supposedly it's like a limited edition thing. So I don't know. I think they're only making like 1,000 Godlike X. I don't know. Supposedly they're coming, like, the new motherboards are supposed to debut next month. I don't know what day. It could be the very end of next month. Who knows? Oh, here we go. Godlike. Okay, Carbon, Edge, Tomahawk, Gaming Plus. Here's a picture of the Ace. That's the Ace. That's the Carbon Max. There's so few pictures of the... Oh, okay, here's the cool thing. Here's the cool thing. So check this out. They actually have headers for you to control the base clock manually. And they've got the ability to control external clock 1 and external clock 2. I don't know why they allow the user to mess with the one that affects PCIe. Because it's like, why do you need to change that? But they let you change the other one. So they can change B clock, so you can see JBCLK2, JBCLK1. So you have B clock 1, B clock 2. So they have that on there. So they're really trying to go all in on overclocking and stuff like that. Yeah. So I don't know. Which one do you guys think is a good one worth considering? I'll tell you right now, the one on the left is $300. The white one is probably somewhere between 300 something and 400. And then the Carbon is like a $500 and the Ace is a $700. Just so you guys. So we got 300, we got 400, we got 700, and we got 500. Those are the prices in US dollars. Now, MSI has not announced pricing. I'm guessing the prices for everyone watching, so you guys can plan your budgets accordingly. Because I have analyzed so many motherboards, I can already guess the price. I'm pretty sure I'm right. So you got $300 Tomahawk Max over here. You have the Edge, no, actually, I take that back. This is not the Edge. This is a Tomahawk in white. Never mind. So you have two Tomahawks. You have a black Tomahawk and a white Tomahawk. Both of them are going to be like $300. The Ace, this one right here, this is their flagship motherboard, but this is not the flagship motherboard, which that's the Godlike. This is their typical. So for those that don't know, the Ace Max is meant to compete with the Asus ROG Crosshair Hero. This is MSI's response to the Asus Hero. So you would expect the Ace to be similar in price to the Hero. And the Hero is a $700 motherboard. So I expect the Ace Max to be around $700. We can thank Asus for dragging the price of motherboards up so high, because all that's going to do is make all the other brands try to like copy them, so they're going to raise all their prices. So this used to be a $500 motherboard. It used to be a $300 motherboard. But now it's a $700 motherboard. And the Carbon Max is a $500 motherboard. So this one is equivalent to the Asus ROG Strix-E. The -E is a $500 motherboard from Asus. So this one matches the Strix-E. This one matches the Crosshair Hero. And then these, the Tomahawk and the other Tomahawk. Tomahawk kind of is like... Tomahawk matches like a lower end Strix. You know, like, because Strix... It's like one of those Strix boards that doesn't have a postcode debug, but the Tomahawk does have a postcode debug. So I would say the Tomahawk is probably better than those Strix boards. The sad thing about Asus is, like, Asus is kind of like Nvidia in the sense that they're the only boards that are good are the like super overpriced expensive ones. Meaning, if you're someone who only wants to spend no more than $300 on a motherboard, you probably should not get an Asus, and you should probably get one of the other brands, because you're going to get way better value for your $300 if you choose an MSI or an ASRock or even a Gigabyte. Whereas Asus, like, Asus is going to nickel and dime, because it's like you only have that much money. Okay, so you don't get a postcode debug. You don't get, like, basic things. You're not going to have a postcode speaker anymore. I mean, that's not even the $1,000 Extreme has that. But it's just, personally, like, if someone told me they had $300 for a motherboard, I would push them to anything but Asus. But if they have, like, $700 or $1,000, or they don't really care how much money the motherboard costs, then Asus can be considered. I don't like TUF. Does TUF have a postcode debug? I thought we looked at TUF and TUF didn't have a postcode debug. So that, in my mind, automatically disqualified them. Unless TUF has a postcode debug, it's pretty much garbage, in my mind. Debug display is on all of these. You can see the debug literally right there. The debug is 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 right there. All of these motherboards, including the $300 Tomahawk, have the postcode debug. Okay, so I think a lot of these motherboard brands learned the hard lesson when they started getting a bunch of returns because they didn't put postcode debugs and people didn't know what memory training was. Okay, so that's the MSI lineup. I'm trying to think, what else was there? Like, MSI, some stuff. Oh, Asus did announce some new things. Hold on, let's just do like an Asus. Okay, well, here we go. This is what I want to talk about next. So speaking of Asus, Asus is introducing the Crosshair X870 Hero BTF edition. So this is the motherboard that they featured in their marketing with the new red ROG Matrix GPU. This is the motherboard that they were showing off at the show with that GPU. So the BTF, this is kind of their big thing they're talking about. You can see the back plate on there with all the connectors. It does have what looks to be a 12-volt high-power connector on the back. So this feeds that 600-watt power over to the front side, which connects into that GPU. So you can see the EPS cables up there, and all of the SATA and everything is on the back. So yeah, everything is on the back, all the connectors. The only thing on the front, I see a fan header for the CPU cooler on the front. I see the BTF power connector on the front, and that's basically it. Everything else is on the back of the motherboard. So this is interesting. I think if this really starts taking off, BTF might become a future standard. Now, I don't know. It's probably going to be many years before we see BTF fully replace the standard ATX form factor. But it is an interesting thing to take note of, because the more we see, really what's going to change the ecosystem is going to be computer cases. If we can see really good computer cases that support BTF motherboards, then I think more people will be likely to adopt them. But we really need to see some really good computer cases. And so far, the ones that I have seen, I think Corsair recently has refreshed their lineup with BTF compatible cases. So we may revisit Corsair in the near future in terms of the case design language that they're doing. But so far, I have not been that impressed with any of the cases that support BTF. So, like, the ones that I'm interested in don't support BTF, and I only go for like the super high end, like, you know, server grade style stuff. So until I see those sort of things supporting BTF, then I think there's a chance that the industry might actually move to BTF. But until I see that happening, most people, well, not most people, but a lot of people are going to stay away from BTF. So yeah, the one thing about this motherboard though, the tech specs, it is definitely different from the existing Crosshair. The thing that I notice immediately is the lack of the dedicated X8 slot at the bottom. So the BTF looks like it has an X4. So I am willing to guess that the main thing that is different from the original Hero and this BTF version is that this one no longer has an X8 slot, so you cannot do dual graphics cards with this motherboard that run at X8 each, unlike the normal one. And in addition to this, this one does not have Slim SAS. I'm pretty sure there is no Slim SAS connector on this motherboard. Instead, Asus provides a standard X4 slot down at the bottom. Just by looking at it, that's what it looks like to me. But let's see if I'm correct. Let's see if Asus can prove me wrong or if Asus is going to prove me right. So let's see. It says, okay, the RAM stuff, 256 gigs of RAM. That's fine. That's the same as the other one. All this other stuff is all the same. So the expansion slot, so it has one Gen 5 X16. And it has the same exact lane sharing that for the second and third M.2. They both share lanes with the graphics card slots. So that's exactly the same as the standard one. And then it has an X16. Wait, what is this? Oh, no, that's the other one. Yeah, there we go. X4. Just like I expected, there is an X4 slot that hangs off the chipset down at the bottom of the board. And for the storage, they have the Gen 5. They have two more Gen 5 that take lanes from the graphics card. Then they have a Gen 4 off the chipset and another Gen 4 off the chipset. And then they have 4 SATA. So there is no Slim SAS, just like I thought. They have sacrificed Slim SAS for an X4 slot, which is totally fine. I think most mainstream desktop users are going to be better off with a standard X4 slot versus a Slim SAS connector. So they have basically traded the Slim SAS for these 4 generic PCIe lanes. That's what they've done. So because you got 4, and then you have 8, and then 12. So all of the Gen 4 lanes from the dual chipsets are accounted for. Nothing is wasted. These are on the Gen 3. And then you have the Wi-Fi is 1 lane. This is another lane. There's another lane, so that's 3. So they put 2 on this probably. So yeah, everything's there. And then they got your dual USB 4 as expected. So yeah, this is probably going to be priced exactly the same, or it should be priced no more than the standard Hero, because technically, if we're talking like capability wise, the standard Hero is objectively superior to the BTF version, because the standard Hero allows you to run 2 graphics cards. The BTF version will only allow you to run 1 graphics card. You can't really do much running a second GPU off of the X4 slot down here. Yeah, unfortunately, this is not an open connector. So I was thinking maybe if this was an open connector, you could remove the heatsink off your SSDs and you could plug in a second GPU, but it would run at X4 off the chipset, which would be pretty bad. It would be terribly bottlenecked. So that's probably not a good idea. And you wouldn't have any cooling for your Gen 4 heats or SSDs. So that's probably not something anyone would be considering. So it does look like this is a single GPU only motherboard, which has an X4 slot, and it's a BTF form factor. So definitely for a specific user that is really wanting to do BTF, and they're not going to need more than 1 GPU. They don't need 10 gigabit networking. It would have been nice if Asus actually upgraded this to 10 gig. I think if this had 10 gig, it would be a more interesting comparison against the normal Hero, because the normal Hero doesn't have 10 gig. And this is literally just a copy paste from the original, just bolted onto the BTF. So yeah, if you're interested in a BTF build, this is probably a good choice. This is a very high-end motherboard. It has all the same overclocking capabilities like the external clock generators and things like that. It has the nitro path for the DDR5 overclocking. Yeah, everything in the box is shown there. So I expect this to be no more than the $700 existing Hero. Even though technically it should cost less because it's less capable, but I know that you're going to have to pay a premium for BTF anyway, so it'll probably cost the same amount of money. It shouldn't cost more, though. I'd be very disappointed if Asus tried to charge more than $700 for a motherboard that is actually capable of less things than the normal one, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I can see this selling for $700, and that's fine. I mean, to me, that's a fair price. Asus, yeah. Well, it's the new GPU pulls power from the motherboard right here. Let me go back to that picture. Where's the? So yeah, actually the back will show you. So there it is. There is the 12-volt high-power connector for the graphics card. So you plug your you basically okay. If you're somebody who is interested in obtaining this graphics card and running it with a proper BTF setup so you can actually pull 800 watts, you will need a power supply that has two native 12-volt high-power cables. One of them will plug into this graphics card. The second one will plug into the back of this motherboard right here so that the GPU can pull the extra power through the motherboard right here. That is how it will work. What is the benefit of using two? I'm using two graphics cards right now, and I'm using the standard Hero on this live stream. You get a lot more encoding capabilities, for one thing. Yeah, I'm using, so for those that are wondering, we are literally live streaming right now using an X870E Crosshair Hero. And we are using two graphics cards. One graphics card is known as the XFX, what is it? The XFX Quicksilver RX 9070 XT. So we are streaming on the 9070 XT, and the second GPU is an Intel Arc A380. And now I have that one down at the bottom in that X8 slot. So yeah, I'm using dual graphics cards. I always prefer dual GPU anyway. But yeah, so this would require a super high-end power supply. Because those power supplies that have two 12-volt are very expensive. The first one that I can think of, the Seasonic that's like a 1600 watt power supply. You pretty much need a 1600 watt power supply minimum, maybe 1500 watt minimum to go with this motherboard if you plan on actually using a 5090. So, the training and inference frameworks have to be specified for two cards. Yeah. For that use case, if you're talking about AI, right? Yeah. But yeah, you would need like a super high-end power supply for this. Because the PSU, see, you'd have to plug this right here. But that's only going to be 600 watts. So you're going to need the second connector for the GPU that goes into the GPU itself. If you don't, then this is no different from any standard 5090. It's going to only pull like 600 watts. That's how the BIOS is set up. There's a whole video about it that Der Bauer did. So let me see here. Oh, this has two. Okay, yeah, this is basically the same as the Astral. It's got the same. Yeah, they recommend 1,000 watt power supply. You're probably gonna need more than 1,000 watts though if you're gonna put this in a BTF motherboard. BTF motherboards are typically gonna be like starting at 1,300 watts and above. I wouldn't recommend running a 5090 with a 1,000 watt PSU anyway. So I guess Asus is saying that like that's the bare minimum. But if you're running that thing, like if you got to remember also, they're saying 1,000 watt PSU. So if all you're doing is you're literally just plugging this GPU and that's it, so you need a 1,000 watt unit, but you're not just doing the GPU. Because remember, 800 watts to the GPU. You're gonna need more than 1,000 watts total because of the waste heat. The waste heat will cause the wattage to draw more than what the GPU says. So if the GPU is saying 800 watts, it's more like 950 something or more. As temperature increases, wattage increases. Waste heat causes more leakage, more wasted electricity. That's how it works. So yeah, I would not recommend 1,000 watt. I don't know why they put 1,000 watt. They should have said 1,200 here, or 1,300 would have been better. But anyway, that's fine, whatever. That's not what I would actually use, but okay. So that is the Hero BTF. This and the MSI lineup were like the main things in terms of hardware, and plus that new GPU from Asus. That was kind of what was shown off. MSI was talking about how, you know, they innovated over the years with the Godlike for overclockers and all this other stuff. They do hold one world record from one of the CPUs. I don't remember if it was some AMD CPU, because I know, like, in terms of all the Intel world record overclocks, Asus holds all of them, I think, except for one that an ASRock OCF from like 10 years ago has. But MSI has like the world record for one of the AMD CPUs. It's not a Ryzen CPU, it's like an old AMD CPU. It might be an FX series or something, but it was in their video. So yeah. Yeah, this does look super cool, though. I do think that, yeah, they're reserving this only for the highest end, which I think is the right thing to do. Meaning, I don't want to see, like, 5080s or 9070 XTs with this. It wouldn't make any sense. So this should be exclusive only to 5090. It's cheaper too, but time from what? Load balancing? What do you mean by load balancing? Man, that 800 watt thing seems like what? This is the only one that can do 800 watts reliably because of the BTF connector in conjunction with the front side connector. Let me see what else is there. Oh, yeah, it looks like somebody with an AMD 9070 XT had a melted, two of the pins kind of degraded here. Which really makes me wonder, you know, what is actually causing it to melt? Because I would think that the metal contacts would need to be at a very high temperature to melt. What I'm starting to wonder is if the melting is actually caused by the plastic. Is it the plastic that's melting instead of the actual metal? And when the plastic starts like softening and melting, it coats the connector, like the actual metal, and then that's what... Because doesn't PVC plastic, I assume this is like a PVC plastic, or it's definitely a plastic on the black cover here. Doesn't that have a lower boiling point than metal, than like tin and aluminum, I would think that the metal itself has to get really, really hot in order for it to melt. And by the time the metal is hot enough to melt, the plastic should have already melted way before the metal even started melting. So to me, it's almost like the problem seems to be related to the plastic on the connector more so than the metal. But I don't really know why this happens. Is it because of the load balancing problem? Like the lack of load balancing is causing this? I think that could be one of the contributing factors. But to me, it seems like it's a temperature problem. It seems like the plastic on these adapters cannot handle the heat load or something along those lines. Every time I see these stories, makes me think, like, is my GPU at risk of melting? Like, this is always very concerning, especially considering now, since this is on a 9070 XT, the 9070 XT doesn't pull as much power as a 4090 or a 5090, and the fact that it happened to a 9070 XT is this is like it happening to like a 4080 or something. So in fact, I think the 4080 uses less power than the 9070 XT. I think this is like 300 plus watts, which really shouldn't cause the connector to melt. Like, the connector should not be melting on a 300 watt GPU or even a 350 watt GPU. So I don't know if this is user error or what, but there was I think I read something about this earlier, and somebody said that the user was using a low-end power supply with the adapter though is included with the GPU. So this is the adapter. You can see the breakouts right there for the 8 pins. So to me, it's like this is literally the official one that came with the graphics card, and this thing melted. So I don't know. I am concerned that it's actually the plastic. The plastic melts, and then that causes the metal to build up resistance. So, but I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't understand why this keeps happening. It seems like this is way too common though. Like the fact that this is still happening even with GPUs that don't pull that much power, that's very concerning. That is very concerning. Yeah, here's some new cases from Corsair. Corsair 1 A600. Now, I don't like that this blocks, like, where's the front? Okay, they have a mesh side, but I don't know, like, where's the airflow supposed to be? Is this supposed to be like a server style thing? I don't think so. It's mesh here, but it's got all this. I don't get it. Lots of cables compromised. It's way too common. Yeah, I think so. It's definitely way too common. I'm just trying to look here. Are there any interesting... there's a new 3D Mark released Solar Bay Extreme, the ultimate ray tracing benchmark. This is the ultimate ray tracing benchmark. So this is what is this, a full path tracing benchmark then? In order for it to claim the ultimate ray tracing benchmark, it better be full path tracing. Otherwise, I don't know how this is an ultimate ray tracing benchmark. But, okay, we got a new thing there. Yeah, that's pretty much it. in terms of the new hardware coming out. Unfortunately, I really wish MSI put their product pages up. Asus put their product page up for the BTF motherboard. I don't know why MSI, they made this whole show about all these motherboards, and it's like, oh, you can't go online and read about them because none of their product pages are up. It's just like this. It's like, okay, this is not really that helpful. You have the old 6 and 8 pin melt as well, and I always check them 200 times before I put the door on the case. Wait, how did you get the old 8 pins to melt? The only 8 pins that I've ever heard of melting are like on old power supplies from the early 2000s. I've never heard of a modern ATX 2.0 power supply having 8 pins that melt. Like, I don't know how that happens. Unless it's like some low-end power supply that just doesn't have the pins. Because the problem is they barely check the spec on those pins because they assume that they're so overbuilt. Even a lot of like cheap power supplies these days, the standard 8 pins are really, really robust. It depends on the amps in the breakers. Most homes in the US are on 15 amp breakers for your standard wall outlet. So it's not so much the wattage, it's the current draw. Probably dust or something, trading GPUs in and out many times. Well, yeah, you guys know that the PCIe power cables have a fixed, or I guess we'll say a limited number of cycles that you can unplug those cables. You can't just plug those in and out like it's a USB-C cable. They're totally not designed to be plugged out and in again and again and again. That's going to set it up for failure. Which, you know, I don't think... The thing is, PCIe SIG, the governing body that wrote the spec for the PCIe cables, I don't think they ever intended for hardware reviewers to do what they do. You know, like hardware reviewer, like Hardware Unboxed. Hardware Unboxed tests so many GPUs. So I can imagine that he has unplugged the GPUs from his power supply that he uses for testing so many times, way over the recommended, what is it, like 30 cycles or something for standard 8 pin. The 12 volt high power, you're not supposed to plug that in and out more than I think 10 times. If you exceed 10 times, you're setting it up for melting. So, but this is something that no one ever really talks about. So I don't know, these people who run into that problem where it melts, I wonder how many times these people have unplugged the cable. Because if they're doing it more than like 7 times, every time you unplug the cable and replug the cable, you raise the risk of it melting. So there's people that are going to be like reading this stuff online, and they're going to be OCD about like, oh, did I get it in correctly? Did I connect it correctly? Maybe I should try it again. They unplug it and they plug it back in. They're like, it's not in all the way. Unplug, plug back in. Oh, now we're up to three cycles. Oh, disconnect, reconnect. That's another 2 cycles. So, yeah, I don't know. It's ridiculous. It just gets worse and worse and worse. Because every time you unplug the cable, you scrape off some of the tin. You're literally damaging the metal contacts. That's why you're not supposed to unplug it that many times. These connectors are not like USB cables, guys. They're not designed. The engineers that designed this cable, did not design it to be plugged in and out like you're plugging in an appliance in a wall. It's not designed for that. Or like I like to use the USB-C cable. This is nothing like a USB-C cable. A USB-C cable can be plugged in and out so many times, like 2,000 cycles, and it'll still be fine. This thing, after like 10 times plugging it in and out, it's already at like less than 50% of the durability remains. At 50 cycles, the probability that it's going to have uneven load current distribution is so high. It's so high. So you're just like people who are doing that, like they're doing maintenance or whatever, they're setting themselves up for a failure. They're actually raising the probability that they'll encounter the melted connector. So it's a really bad design. The fact that this still happens, the fact that this literally happened on a 320 watt GPU is very concerning. Because the 9070 XT doesn't even come anywhere close to the power consumption of a 5090. Yet this guy still managed to run into a melted connector on like a 320 something watt GPU. Like, really? Wow. That's alarming. That is alarmingly bad. That means that connector is just so bad. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know, man. The other thing too is I wonder, like, the environment that these people are, they have the GPU in an environment where when they go to plug in the cable, is there dust? Is there debris? Because there's dust and debris on these metal contacts. You plug it in, the dust gets stuck in there and it heats up. The dust literally disintegrates and it leaves carbon deposits on the metal. That is going to build up resistance on the metal. And what does that mean? That means that, the clean cables, the clean wire, has to pull more of the current now because the one that has the dust is not pulling enough current because it has higher resistance. So the ones that melt, here's the thing. The wires that melt are actually the cleaner connectors. The dirty ones are the ones that don't melt. It's the clean ones that melt. You know why? Because when the dirty one is dirty, it doesn't pull as much electricity. It doesn't pull as much current because it has a higher resistance. So I guess we'll show this in paint. So here we go, paint time. What causes the connectors to melt? You have wires. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 wires. So this side is the GPU connector. This is the GPU side. This is the GPU side. For illustrative purposes, we're just gonna, we'll just do it like this, whatever. Well, we'll just do it like this. This is the GPU side. Now, on the connector side, the cable side, it's actually more like it goes over it. It's like this. So imagine we're looking at this like it's an X-ray. We're not seeing all the plastic. We're just seeing the metal. So if you have dust, we'll just put dust in purple. How does that show up? Okay, yeah. We'll just put dust as purple. So let's say we have like dust. Let's say pin 1, this guy has dust. He has dust. There's dust in here. There's like a little bit of dirt. There's dust or whatever. There's like dust particles. Actually, that doesn't show up that well unless I zoom in. I'm gonna use I have to use a brighter color. Let's use yellow. So you have dust on pin 1. If you have dust, when the electrons flow, the electrons are flowing. The electricity is flowing. Oh, there's dust. The dust is like, it's like, well, okay, I was gonna use like a human medical analogy. I was gonna say plaque and arteries, but we won't go there. So the dust is going to impede the electrical current from flowing smoothly, kind of like plaque in an artery. So what does it do? It's gonna be like, oh, don't go this way. There's too much dust here. Let's go more of us. So they go down this guy. More of them rush into the second pin or the third pin or whatever. Like, you know why? Because electricity will take the path of least resistance. It'll always favor the path of least resistance. And remember, there is no circuitry to load balance. There is nothing here. There's no, like, there's nothing controlling them lining up. It's like there's no one saying, you guys line up in line 1, you guys line up in line 2, you guys are line 3, line 4, line 5, line 6. There's no traffic controller for the electricity. The electricity will just flow whatever, right? It's going to flow whatever is the best one. Whatever is the cleanest pin, we're going to all pile in there and flow down that one. Just flow in there. It doesn't matter. Just get in there. Just get in line. Rush through. Uh-oh, this one down here has dust. This one over here has dust or dirt or something or whatever. It's like, so that one is like, oh, that one's bad. Don't go down there, guys. Go down the other one. Don't go down here. There's a few electrons that want to go down here. They're like, you guys are losers. You're going down the one that's slow. We're going to go down these. So what's going to happen? The clean ones are going to end up pulling more amps. They're going to pull more amps. Not less. They're going to pull more amps. The dirty ones are going to pull less amps. So when you measure this, and I have already done a YouTube video showing this earlier this year. We've used a current clamp meter to look at individual wires while playing Black Myth Wukong, because that is a very demanding game. That is a GPU-bound game. And we have shown how this occurs. So, or that it is occurring, you know, like I don't really know why or how, but it is. So, what you'll see is that you go and measure the current on these wires. The first wire is pulling like 2 amps. The second one, this is too big. This font is like way too big. 26 font. So this one's like 2 amps. Pin 1 is pulling like 2 amps. Pin 3 is pulling like 5 amps. Pin 3 is pulling like 4 amps. 5 amps. 3 amps, 1 amp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can see it is uneven. The dirty one down here is really, really dirty. Lots of foreign debris. You got like cat fur in there. You got some tiny little dust particles in there. That's causing resistance to be very high. So you get low current as a result. The upper one, same deal. 2 amps. These, as a result, the ones in the middle have to suffer and basically have to carry the weight of those dirty cables, those dirty wires. They're going to have to heat that up. So what's going to happen is what happens when you run at an uncapped frame rate. This is the behavior when you cap the frames at like 60 frames per second. So what happens when you run a 5090 with no frame cap, yet you have this behavior? It is set up for utter disaster to strike, because now you're going to see something like this guy's still only pulling like 2 amps. You can't really go much higher because it's a dirty connector. This guy's going up to like 8 amps. This guy's going up to like 10 amps. This guy's at 9 amps. This guy's at 7 amps. This guy's at 1 amp. So there's a problem. So you can see that, yeah, one of those is going to melt soon. One of them is going to melt. And I know which one it is. Pin 3 is going to melt. And if this was an RTX Astral, guess what? GPU tweak would be sounding the alarm. This one would be lighting up in red on the screen. This will be lighting up red because there's an uneven load. If it exceeds 9 amps, if greater than 9 amps implies alarm. Alarm goes off with the Astral, but only the Astral is capable of alerting the user that there is an emergency situation brewing. There's a Chernobyl thing about to happen. There's about to be a Chernobyl on this GPU. You better do something. Get out the vacuum cleaner and clean this up. But when you disconnect it, guess what? Now you have kind of like, that's one of those cycles that you just used up. So, yeah. So that's how it happens. That is one of the reasons why it happens. It's not the only reason. But see, without any sort of circuitry, to force the load balance, to force this to be equal, using shunt resistors, there is a disaster waiting to happen. Well, it's not Astral, though. You're talking about the power supply. It's the power supply, not the Astral. Yes, that is one thing that I've noticed. It seems like power supply, because who's affected in this situation? There's two people affected besides the user. The GPU manufacturer is at risk, and the power supply manufacturer is at risk. Because the power supply manufacturer has to deal with this sort of thing on the other end of the cable. So what I've noticed is that power supply manufacturers are trying to take steps to address this problem that can happen. So, yeah, this is, it's not like the design itself isn't necessarily bad. It's just implemented so poorly with no safety controls, no basic things. The fact that the 30 series had circuitry in place to prevent this from happening using such a simple addition of shunt resistors. If NVIDIA had kept the shunt resistors in their design, no one would be talking about this. If they did that, then anyone who wanted to use the connector would then have to copy them, essentially. That includes those that are using this on AMD cards, like ASRock, and we would not have had this situation occur with any of these cards, including the 5090s that melted like early on when this card first launched. Anyway, that's why it happens. That's how it happens. I remember there was one, I think it was either Gamers Nexus or Derbauer. Somebody, this was back when the 4090 cables were melting, and there was the 4090 that was getting all the media attention. One of those channels did an X-ray on the normal cable. Then they also did the burnt cable. One thing that stood out in the X-ray was the presence of what they referred to as foreign debris in the connector. Because what will happen is if you have let's say we have the actual connector here. This is the wire. This is actually the wire on the GPU. So this is a solid pin. This is like pin 1. If you have a speck of dust, like a little speck of dust right there, When you heat up this connector, you start forcing electricity. You force 6 amps, 9 amps down this little wire, this little connector. What happens to that piece of dust? The temperature is heating up. What happens to the dust? The dust burns up. It disintegrates due to the heat. But what does it leave behind? It leaves behind something called a carbon deposit. It burns away and leaves a carbon stain on the metal contact. So now you don't have a piece of dust there anymore. Now you have carbon debris on the metal. And that is going to impede the flow of electricity because that is literally carbon. Carbon is not a conductor of electricity. It is an insulator of electricity. So that is going to cause when the electrons start flowing through from the cable wire is here, or actually the cable wire is here from the actual cable, because the white one, this is on the GPU. This is the GPU's pin. This in gold is the physical connector in the cable. Now when the electricity flows, this is literally blocking the current from flowing. So this carbon deposit is going to prevent electricity from flowing as evenly, keyword evenly, across this pin compared to a neighboring pin that doesn't have the carbon deposit. So that is one way you get how you can create uneven current distribution across these pins. Due to what I don't remember if it was Gamers Nexus or Der Bauer, whoever did the X-ray on the connector way back in like 2022 when the 4090 first came out and the first batch of connectors were melting. They did an X-ray. Der Bauer did someone did an X-ray and they found foreign debris. They didn't really talk too much about foreign debris. They just kind of like mentioned it. It's like, oh, there's little specks you can see in the X-ray. That's probably foreign debris like dust or something, contaminants. And I was thinking when he was saying, he just kind of like brushed over that, and I'm like, that could possibly be one of the reasons why the connector melts, because that's going to burn up and cause carbon deposits to get stains, physical stains on the metal, which will prevent electricity from flowing smoothly, and that's going to cause less current to go through that pin, which will force the other ones to have to pick up the slack, and the other ones will then be at higher amperage because there is no load balancer to force to adjust on the voltage side. So anyway, there's a lot of other reasons besides this. What I'm talking about here is the reasons how this can happen that are not necessarily user error. User error, because the user can't really control 100% for this. The user can try to maintain like a clean room to the best of their ability, but they're not gonna be like in an Intel foundry wearing an entire clean suit and they go through this like airlock room where it vacuums everything out of the room. They're not gonna have that in their own home. You know what I'm saying? So there's no way that the users are going to be able to avoid all the dust, tiny little microscopic dust, from making its way into the connector. The user can try their best, try all they can to the best of their ability, but it's not guaranteed. So that's why I don't consider this a user error. But what I'm explaining here is how this melting connector can occur where it is not the user to blame. Because a lot of people are blaming the users. The fact that this still keeps happening, it's hard for me to sit here and be like, oh yeah, it was the user. The user messed up. They're to blame. NVIDIA didn't do anything wrong. They have a perfect design. It's the user's fault that it melted. You know, like, it's easy to say that, but in reality, the user probably had nothing to do with the cable melting. It was probably something like this that happened behind the scenes over time. Who knows? But because obviously if they don't know how to plug the cable in all the way and it melts and blah blah, we've already seen all of the examples of how you can cause it to melt due to an actual user error, but no one has talked about the scenarios where it can melt when it is not a user error, where it is not the user's fault. So this hopefully brings some attention to the fact that this can happen and it's not necessarily the user's fault in every case. I think for those of you that need to RMA the MSI Easy Bridge, MSI will do the RMA pretty easily. They're not gonna like argue with you about it. You know what I'm saying? So whether or not you get the new one or the old one, I don't know. That's based off of their inventory. Okay, well that is that. I wasn't expecting to even talk about that on this stream. The melting connector. Okay. Okay, Resident Evil Requiem. This game is looking like it's going to be one of the games to pay attention to for next year. So at Gamescom, they showed off some... well, actually, the people that were there were able to demo the game, and there was a lot of good stuff people were saying about the graphics technology that they're using. One thing Digital Foundry mentioned was that Resident Evil Requiem, unlike the previous Resident Evil games, this one is not made for the PlayStation 4. So there will be no PlayStation 4 version of this game, thankfully, finally, which means that now there is nothing holding Capcom back from unleashing the full next generation SDK capabilities of their RE engine. So path tracing, it has full path tracing. Definitely check out that video if you're interested in how RE engine is shaping up to get its big update next year. Interesting, there's another game from Capcom that is also featuring the Onimusha. Onimusha Way of the Sword, which is also coming out sometime next year. That one is also on the exact same engine. But when I looked at the gameplay of that game did not look that impressive visually. So it's almost like the Onimusha game is using whatever they did for Monster Hunter. That's what they're doing for Onimusha. And Requiem is using whatever it is that they're doing differently to upgrade RE Engine. So, that being said, the Resident Evil games themselves, like all the way back to Resident Evil 7, all of them have looked very impressive visually. I think when the game is a linear game in a very specific game world environment, meaning it's not an open world game, meaning it's not Monster Hunter, it's not Dragon's Dogma, I think the RE engine is capable of very good high fidelity visuals. But when they do open world, the engine has very unfortunate scaling challenges that we have kind of suffered through for Capcom's last two big games. So those are the two games that I have listed for next year that were shown off. The other one, Neo 3, I think, is next year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Neo 3. Yeah, Neo 3 is supposed to be next year. So that's the big action game. So I know there's like a bunch of action games that are like Souls-like games coming from like Chinese studios, some smaller Chinese development studios. But it is nice to see the big name franchises like Neo, Onimusha, Ninja Gaiden make a big return to form, because the one thing that I've noticed is that the Souls genre is like and I've said this before, I'll say it again. The Chinese studios are great, but I think that there's too much emphasis on kind of replicating what From Software does when it comes to the combat system in the game. And I would like them to try to do their own thing more than just try to make like a Sekiro clone without it being Sekiro. You know what I'm saying? Whereas with these other games like Onimusha, they're staying true to their roots. It is an Onimusha game. It is not a Souls-like game, thankfully. And I didn't expect them to do a Souls-like game. So thankfully, Onimusha is staying true to what it actually is. And it is not a Souls-like. And I'm very happy that that is the case. Neo 3, a lot of people like to call this a Souls-like. That's because the first Neo came out, I think, like, what, 1 year. Yeah, it was 1 year, less than a year, but almost a year after Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 was 2016. Neo 1 was 2017. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's Team Ninja's Souls-like. Well, kind of, but it's like, did everybody forget about Ninja Gaiden? Because it's like Neo is actually really, really fast-paced. It's way, way faster than Dark Souls. It's actually a lot more tempo-wise. It's a lot more like Ninja Gaiden. And it's just as punishing. So I never really understood why everyone kept saying that Neo is a Souls-like. I guess the main thing that makes it seem like a Souls-like is the stamina bar. And I've said this before. When developers, like, they shoehorn you into either parry-based combat or dodge-based, like, perfect timing, dodges and parries, but they also give you a stamina meter, I don't know if that's the right approach, unless you have a more, like, a larger stamina meter or no stamina meter. So the thing about these Souls-like games, like Kazan, Lies of P, Wuchang, Black Myth Wukong, like, these games all have stamina meters, so you have to manage your stamina. But if they're at the same time they're trying to make you either do perfect dodges or perfect pairing as an integral part of the gameplay of the combat system in particular. And the problem with that is the game that the industry tends to compare them to is always Sekiro. It is always Sekiro. But what no one seems to mention is the fact that Sekiro does not have a stamina meter. Sekiro has infinite stamina, just like Ninja Gaiden. So I'm thinking, like, people seem to fail to realize that the thing about Sekiro that made it so perfect was that the combat was basically like playing, it was like playing a rhythm game. I've heard a lot of people compare it to a rhythm game in the sense that the boss attack patterns were well choreographed or telegraphed, I should say. So you could literally choreograph the fight if you knew the boss moveset like the back of your hand. And the fact that there's no stamina meter means you don't even have to worry about managing stamina. So that's one less thing you have to deal with. As a result, everyone seems to say Sekiro is perfection because it manages to do all of that so well. Fast forward years later, now we got all these Souls-likes that are basically using Sekiro-style combat mechanics, but they have the added stamina meter from the Souls games. And that kind of makes it have what I consider tedious difficulty. Tedious difficulty, keyword, tedious, not fun, not really that rewarding. I mean, okay, yeah, it is rewarding when you manage to succeed in beating the boss, but the fact that you have to constantly manage stamina, and it's such a high tempo, like, battle system, to me, that's a big turnoff to a lot of people. I've seen a lot of, like, mixed views and mixed opinions on the recent wave of these Souls-like games. I mean, I remember reading some of the comments to, like, the Wuchang game that came out, and a lot of it was like, oh, it looks like it's such a great game, I'd love to try it, but it has that stupid Souls, like, gameplay style that I will refuse to play, you know, like, that opinion is actually shared by a pretty sizable audience, and I think that if they either went all in on, like, the Dark Souls style and not so much like, oh, block, parry, dodge, you know, like, maybe it would have been perceived better, or alternatively, they would have gone the Devil May Cry style and the Ninja Gaiden style and get rid of the stamina meter altogether, and now you can run everything as fast as possible because the player doesn't have to deal with any of that. That's what made Ninja Gaiden 2 Black so refreshing to play earlier this year, even though that is technically not even a new game. It's literally a UE5 port of a game from like 2009. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, wow, who would have thought, man, Team Ninja just shadow dropping Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is so much more refreshing to play than all these wave after wave of similar Souls-like games. Opinion on MSI Gaming Plus versus Tomahawk. Gaming Plus is what again? MSI X870 Gaming Plus. This, oh, I can tell you right now, looking at this, the Tomahawk's better. I can tell you that just one glance at this, and I can already tell you the Tomahawk's better. Tomahawk's definitely better. So which one I recommend? Tomahawk. The only thing interesting about this has a bunch of X1 slots. This is an X1 slot. This is an X1 slot. So if you need X1 slots for some reason, and you're not going to run a high-end graphics card, where you're going to still be able to utilize these two X1 slots for things, I guess, then maybe you would consider this. But in general, the Tomahawk is a vastly superior motherboard to this. And you know why? Number one, I can tell the Tomahawk, well, this looks like it does have, no, so this one doesn't have toolless heat sinks down here. This one does not have a postcode debug. That's why I instantly looked for the postcode debug, and it didn't have one, and I know the Tomahawk does have one, so I was like, okay, that means the Tomahawk. So, like, if I'm the reasoning AI, and I'm telling you my reasoning for saying the Tomahawk is better, the first thing I do when analyzing, visually just glancing at this motherboard, I immediately look for the postcode debug. If I don't see the postcode debug, I immediately know that the Tomahawk is better. It's like, immediately the Tomahawk is better. Like, just instantly, you know? Like, instinctively, I just look for that, and I'm like, oh, it's not there. This is automatically lower end. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is terrible. It just means that compared to the Tomahawk, it's not as good. There may be a specific reason someone might need X1 slots, and that would be a reason to get this, but it's like, who here needs X1 slots? And if you do, I would like to know what you use an X1 PCIe slot for. The only thing I can think of is cryptocurrency mining, but even then, cryptocurrency mining can be done with a very specific motherboard that is meant for crypto with USB connectors here. Alternatively, the other thing that I can think of is sound cards. Like a sound card could go in an X1. But most people nowadays are going to use USB DACs. So that's why, and you could always just use the bottom slot for the sound card. So that's why I don't really see the point of X1 slots in 2025. They're very, very niche. The difference between X870E and X870 is X870E has a second chipset. X870E is a dual chipset. X870 is a single chipset. So the X870E version is higher end than the non-E. Because it has more connectivity. The difference... We can clean up all this stuff. The difference between the two of them is CPU socket goes here. Here's the chipset. This is X870. And then, well, the difference is X870 has this. That's the difference. This is X870. This is X870E. So what do you get? You get 4 more PCIe Gen 4 lanes. And 4 more Gen 3 lanes. PCIe 3.0, 4 lanes. PCIe 4.0, 4 lanes. You do not get this with X870. X870, you get... Now, remember, both of them still have the same CPU lanes. Both of them still have the full PCIe 5.0 X24. You still have 24 lanes of Gen 5 on both X870 and X870E. That doesn't change. What changes is you have a middle chipset on X870 which is completely absent on X870. X870 has PCIe 4.0 X8, PCIe 3.0 X4, and down here you have the exact same thing. So you have PCIe 4.0 X8, PCIe 3.0 X4. Both of them have 24 Gen 5. They're identical on CPU lanes because these are CPU lanes. This is the CPU. This is known as AM5 socket. This is known as PROM21. 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 So you have 2 PROM21s on X870E, and you only get 1 on this guy. So what do you get? You get, on X870, you get 24 Gen 5, 8 Gen 4, and 4 Gen 3. On X870E, you get 24 Gen 5, you get 12 Gen 4, and 8 Gen 3. So like I said, the difference is the additional 4 lanes of Gen 4 and 4 lanes of Gen 3. That is the only difference between X870 and X870E. Oh no, it is still a decent upgrade. If these two are within $50, like if this guy is $50 more than this guy, I'm gonna get this guy. I'm gonna pay the $50 more because I want this. And like HDZ is saying, typically The X870Es are going to have your 8-layer boards. So they're going to have better signal-to-noise ratios, which means that if you ever want to do any sort of overclocking, this is going to be the better overclocking board than X870. Because more effort was put into the noise isolation. Let's put it this way. There's a reason why all of my motherboards are only X870. I don't have a single X870 motherboard. Like, I personally don't own any X870 motherboards. I only have X870 motherboards. One is for overclocking videos. One is for literally what we're doing right now, live streaming. I'm not saying that these are bad, okay? I don't want people to interpret that in the wrong way. Like, X870 is fine for a standard mainstream budget build. There's nothing wrong with X870. I'm just saying, like, if they're within $50 or, okay, let's say if they're within $70, I mean, I would be willing to pay $70 more for an equivalent X870 version over an X870. Because I know that it has probably a better PCB, better layout, more USB port. Oh, the other thing I didn't talk about is you do get more USB with X870E. Because the USB is also dependent on the Promontory 21 chipset. Is there even... I thought MSI discontinued. Do they still make the X870 Tomahawk? I think they made the X870E shortly after. Oh, there's a new one though, right? There's the Max. Is the Tomahawk Max an X870 or an X870E? I'm using an ASRock X870 Nova with a 9800 X3D, and I'm not having any issues. $990. What are we talking about? $990 Evo? You're talking about this? Is someone talking about this? A 990 Evo Plus? Or are you talking about something else? I see someone mentioning 990 Evo. Is it 990 Evo Plus? The original X870 Tomahawk was an 8-layer board. I think it was an 8-layer board. What I remember is that the X870 was an 8-layer board. The one that was a 6-layer board was the Z890. So in the beginning, there were two Tomahawks from last year. There was X870 Tomahawk, which was 8-layer. And there was also Z890 Tomahawk, which was 6-layer. This is what I remember. The Intel version was 6 layers. The AMD version was 8 layers. That's all I remember. And then, like someone just mentioned, a month later, MSI launched X870E Tomahawk, which was an 8-layer, and it was exactly the same price as the non-E version. It was like a $300 board, is what I remember. That's what I remember. This was almost a year ago. Because remember, guys, literally a year ago was the launch of Ryzen 9000. So If you guys remember, August 2024 was the launch of the standard non-X3D Zen 5 Ryzen 9000 series. The motherboards, the X870 motherboards, X870E motherboards, they launched at the end of September. I don't understand why they launched at the end of September, because it was like, oh, Zen 5 launches with no new motherboards, so you gotta wait like a month and a half for the motherboard. It was literally the last day of September with the launch of X870E. Because we did a whole bunch of live stream content. We did a bunch of like build videos around that time last year. And then Intel launched their stuff. They're like, hold on, wait for us. We got stuff too. Intel Core Ultra with Z890 launched in October of last year. So we had all these Z890 6-layer boards that just kind of showed up out of nowhere and just kind of like rained in on the X870E parade. The live mixer is 8-layer. Well, and now, because of the success of the X3D on Zen 5, I feel like a lot of the motherboard manufacturers are incentivized to make a bunch of new motherboards. And that's why we're seeing stuff like the Ace Max, the Godlike Max, or Godlike X Edition, the Tomahawk Max, the Carbon Max, all these like new ones. It's weird because the last time they did something like this was when Intel launched 14th gen, when they copy-paste 13th gen and called it 14th gen. Then we had all these new remember Z790 Max, Unify Max, all that stuff. That was all like 2 years ago in October of 2023 with the launch of Intel's 14th gen CPUs. X870B, this 8-layer. Yeah, all the X870E is 8-layer. You know why it needs to be 8-layer though, right? It's not 8-layer because of this. This is not the reason it's 8-layer. It's 8-layer because of these. You know what I mean? Blueberry, thanks for the super chat. I don't know why it's not, like, it should be showing on the stream when you do that. I don't know why. 10-layer, yeah. Yeah, the 10-layer, though, I don't know. To be honest, like, I don't think the 10-layer makes that big of a difference. Just now that I've had so much hands-on time with the Godlike, it doesn't really seem... I mean, it's nice to have, but I don't really know if it makes that big of a difference compared to 8-layer. I do think 8-layer is kind of the happy medium. Definitely better than 6, but I don't know if 10-layer is worth doing. Current memory controller is the main bottleneck. Did you see the buried news about Ace Max? We talked about the Ace Max already. It's coming next month. All those motherboards are next month. I don't know why September though. Like of all the times, like I guess it's like a year later they do it for some reason. Consumer, you meaning non-Threadripper? I don't know. I have no idea. There may have been one like an MSI M-Power from way back in the day, but I don't know. Hold on, do we know what the MSI... I don't see the specs on it. Do we know what it has? Hold on, actually there is a... Hold on, there was an article somewhere. I'm trying to find it. MSI intros, all this stuff. Unfortunately, it's not on the... Even the WCCF Tech article doesn't show it. They don't tell you what's on there. I think it... Does it have the 10 gig LAN? I thought it had the same stuff as the Godlike. Without being the Godlike. They were buried? What do you mean? See, what I'm looking at here is this. But they don't tell you the stuff on the Ace. They only tell you these other ones, which is really no different. It's barely different, if at all, from the existing ones. So I don't know what exactly they change on these other ones, like the Max Wi-Fi, the Max Wi-Fi Tomahawk, the Edge, the Carbon. I could have sworn this one... They say this is Tomahawk. You can see the Ace right there. So one thing that's different from the old Ace is the new Ace is standard ATX. All Ace boards before were single. That's not true. That's not true. The X670E Ace has 10 gig. We've got people watching the stream that have the old Ace, and they have the 10 gig. So I expect the Ace to have 10 gig. Now, I don't know if the second interface is 5 gig or 2.5 gig. But the old Ace was definitely 10 gig. Yeah, this guy, the old big EATX Ace, this thing has 10 gig. X670. The previous one, the one for the 7000 series Ryzen CPUs. 10 gig right there. Now, it doesn't have dual LAN, though. So, yeah, I expect the Ace to have 10 gig. If the old Ace had 10 gig and the new one... Because you can imagine what the press will say if the new Ace doesn't have 10 gig and it's like... If it has dual LAN, if it's like 5 gig plus 2.5 gig, then it's kind of a good... I mean, they can kind of like recover, except people will be like, oh, but the old one had 10 gigs, so this one's kind of a downgrade in some ways. but it has, the old one didn't have USB 4. Like, that was the one thing about MSI. MSI, they were the only vendor for X670E that didn't offer USB 4 as an option. Like, there was no way to get it at all. Like, they didn't have Thunderbolt, they didn't have any of that. It's like you couldn't get it at all. I think when 14th gen, I think it was 14th gen. When 14th gen launched, MSI came out with a USB 4 card for the Z790 Max. Those had it. But everything else, both the AMD boards and the Intel boards, did not have any USB 4 capabilities. So what I'm curious to know, what made them go from eATX down to standard ATX? The only thing I can think of is Asus is standard ATX on the crosshair, so MSI is probably following what Asus is doing, and they're just going to do standard ATX. Because the old Ace, this one is an eATX board. It's got that wide stance. The new one is definitely not. The new one is a standard... Yeah, this is a standard ATX board. Like all these other ones. Which means the Godlike is the only one that's eATX. Oh, that's right. There's a Z890 Ace that launched with the Arrow Lake CPUs last year. Yeah, you're right. I don't even know what that came with. Z890 Ace. So this launched last October. Yeah, this guy. I remember we looked at this last year. So this one, standard ATX. But we could use this to try to understand what the new one for the AMD board will have. See, it looks like this one doesn't have the LCD screen. The new AMD one has the LCD screen. So it has X16, and I'm guessing this is an X8 or an X4? Or dual X4s or something. And the new one, this one has, okay, they got an open X4 and they have an X8. So it looks like the Ace Max is basically a $700 Godlike without all the bells and whistles like the Easy Bridge and stuff, which some people might actually prefer. If this has the 10 gig plus 5 gig, this is probably a very, very good... It's a cheaper alternative to the Godlike. Because if it has the 10 gig... Because looking at it right here, I can tell that bottom slot is an X4 open-ended, just like on the Godlike. And this one here, the second slot, is probably the X8 that shares lanes with the top slot for dual graphics cards. So that means that it is different from this one. So let's see, does this one... What does this one have? From CPU. Okay, so yeah. It's going to be like the Intel version. It's going to have dual GPU capability, and then it has like a dedicated X4 from the chipset down at the bottom. It has a 10 gig LAN. Wait, I thought this had dual LAN. This doesn't have dual LAN. The Intel version only has a 10 gig LAN. I thought it had dual LAN. What? The Z890 Ace didn't have dual LAN? $10 gig is good if you have a home NAS or a home lab. Otherwise, you're not really going to benefit from it. I mean, unless you somehow manage to have 10 gigabit internet, which most people don't have, especially if you're in the US. But yeah, the Intel version, up until this time, for some reason I could have sworn this had dual LAN. Apparently this one doesn't have dual LAN. Which is weird because Z890 has good lane count for a mainstream platform. Z890, one of the things Z890 did correctly is it finally gave the users a decent amount of lanes without too much bandwidth lane sharing stuff. Z790 was terrible because of all the lane sharing. It had lane sharing galore. Oh my goodness, Z790 was terrible. But Z890 fixed all of that. That's one of the things I like about Intel's Core Ultra. Intel's Core Ultra, in a lot of ways, fixed so many issues that Intel had on the consumer desktop platform. Number one, Intel had like no lanes. Number two, it's like, okay, if you wanted to do... The biggest problem with Z790 was if you wanted to use the top SSD, like this one, regardless of what SSD you put in there, as soon as you put an SSD in the primary M.2 slot on a Z790 motherboard, your GPU was automatically running at 8 lanes because the top slot shares lanes with the graphics card on every single Z790 board that claims to offer Gen 5 storage capabilities. This was a platform limitation due to not enough lanes. The biggest thing from a platform perspective that Z890 corrected was that problem. Z890, every single Gen 5 SSD slot on the top of the motherboard here does not share lanes with the graphics card. So that alone, to me, makes Z890 like better than 14th gen. I don't care if 14th gen is like 2% faster in gaming compared to Intel's Core Ultra. Intel's Core Ultra used less power. It had more lanes. It had way less stupid lane sharing nonsense compared to Z890. And it was a newer platform. And it supports more forward things. Every Z890 motherboard has USB 4, just like on the AMD stuff. Whereas Z790 was very hit or miss. Most of them didn't even have any USB 4. So that's like another thing. And then the other thing, CUDIM support. You get CUDIM support on Z890. You do not get CUDIM support on Z790. That's just the nature of the newer platform getting those advantages. So if I'm looking at things in a vacuum where it's literally Intel versus Intel, Intel Core Ultra is just straight up better than the old Intel stuff. Coupled with the fact that the old Intel CPUs had the whole like vmin degrading issue, blue screen of death, crashing, all this stuff, BIOS updates all throughout last year. You know, coupled with all of that, Z890, yeah, there's a lot of BIOS updates, but there's no risk of your CPU just dying because it's not 14th gen or 13th gen. It is not Raptor Lake. It is Arrow Lake. It's not going to have that problem. So, you want it for a NAS connection? Okay, well, the Ace Max. So this is the one from last year. The Ace Max is coming soon. There will most likely be an Ace Max for Intel CPUs. So we're not quite done with CPUs this year. There is a new family of CPUs which is going to launch in a few months. It is going to be Intel CPUs. So for those of you that are not aware, Intel will be launching new CPUs in like 2 months, or maybe less than 2 months now. It'll be October. So they're going to launch their new Arrow Lake refresh, which will feature the Intel Core Ultra 9 385K. I assume that's what they're going to call it. But the Intel Core Ultra is coming back with a vengeance. It'll be the final CPU line for Intel's motherboards. Now, I don't know if Intel's going to do a whole new like chipset name. I hope they don't, because I don't think they should do that. Because they didn't do that with 14th gen. And the new Core Ultra 300 is basically the same thing as 14th gen. It is literally a repeat of the previous one. 14th gen is copy-paste 13th gen in disguise. 300 series Arrow Lake is basically 200 series Arrow Lake in disguise. So because of that, I don't expect Intel to change the name of their chipset, meaning it's going to still be Z890. But there's going to be a bunch of new motherboards from the likes of MSI and the others. So I can totally see the MSI Z890 Ace Max. So it'll literally be this exact same motherboard, but instead of the AM5 socket, it's going to have the LGA 1851 socket. So they'll probably see those things later this year in Q4 for the Intel CPUs. All right, well, I think we're kind of at the end of the live stream. There's really, like I said earlier this week, there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's really just the new motherboards that are coming out in several weeks from now. Otherwise, for games, there are some games that are coming out soon. September is actually jam-packed full of games. October is as well. And then November, as far as I know, has like nothing unless you're someone who likes Call of Duty. I think Call of Duty 7 or whatever, Black Ops, whatever it is coming out in November. Well, other than that, so I'm trying to think. So what do we have? I don't have my thing in front of me here. Yeah, I don't have my notes here, but it looks like we have hold on, let me just see, upcoming games in September. So August, there's 2. August, this month, literally the end of this month, a week from now, there will be 2 games. Metal Gear Solid is coming out. And then there's another one. Lost Soul Aside is also coming out, I think on the same day. Let me see if this... Let's see here. Is this year? What is this? Is this year? August. Okay, yeah, it's this year. So, Mafia: The Old Country came out. We're talking about games that are still not out yet. So, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater is coming out. Lost Soul aside. Shinobi Art of Vengeance. I don't know what that is, but that's on Nintendo Switch 2. Kirby and the Forgotten Land for the Switch 2, plus Starcross World. That is also coming out next week. This other one, I don't know what this is, but Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar. These are the games for next week. And then September, there's a lot. So September has an awful lot. There's Hell Is Us. And there's all these other ones that I haven't been tracking at all. Apparently Indiana Jones. I thought this was already out. Oh, DLC. DLC. Everybody's Golf. Borderlands 4 is coming out on September 12th. Silent Hill F is September 25th. So that's one that we'll probably be showcasing on stream. Yeah, I think there is another game that is also coming out in September, which is interestingly not on this list, which is good. So we'll keep that game hidden for now. We will not reveal that game, but that is a game that we will be showcasing. And then for October, there's Ghost of Yote. So that one I'll probably be covering that. I thought, Borderlands 4 is coming to Switch 2 on October. Battlefield 6 comes out October 10th. I will not be covering that. And then Pokemon Legends Z through A, Nintendo Switch 2, we'll get that on October 16th. And Ninja Gaiden 4 will be on October 21st. And that is the last game. Well, it almost was the last game. There is another game though. So Tales of Xillia was recently announced at Gamescom, the remastered version. This was very good news because this is a game that I was wondering when we would see this be remastered, because this is a game that has literally just existed on the PS3 the whole time. It's just been on the PS3. It's been trapped on the PS3. No PC version, no remaster, no nothing. Now finally at Gamescom it was revealed that it will get a remaster, and it's coming out at the very end of October on Halloween. So I don't know if we're going to cover that. I don't really feel like going back and revisiting that game. But that is one that just kind of like stuck out to me, like, oh wow, finally a game that's not going to be stuck on the PS3 for eternity. Now, if only Xenosaga, if only that trilogy, which is still stuck on the PS2, if only that could get a remaster. If that gets a remaster, then there is hope for humanity. In the gaming industry, that is. Alright, and then for November, there's literally like nothing that I'm interested in on this entire list. So there's kind of nothing. Oh, Kirby Air Raiders was announced, so maybe that, but I don't know.
Got priority access to buy 5090 FE. I bought it. Deciding what to do with it. I already have Astral 5090 9800 extension 3D. I could put it in the secondary rig. Should I hold out for new boards? Add to the old rig? Well, what? So you're using the old rig for something? Wait, why did you... I'm confused. If you already have the Astral, why did you buy the FE when the FE is known to be one of the worst versions of the 5090? I'm confused. If you have an Astral, what is the reason for the Founders Edition? The Founders Edition is loud, and it is the connector is very, very bad because of the way it's right angled. So I'm just curious.
As someone who has the Astral, why did you buy the FE? Can you explain that? It's like, I don't understand. Wait, why would you get rid of the 4090? What 4090 did you have? Which 4090 did you have? I hope that wasn't a Founders Edition 4090. The Founders Edition 4090 is probably worth, in like 2 years or something, the Founders Edition 4090 will probably be worth more money on the used market than the Founders Edition 5090. The FE is not good. There's been a lot of videos that have shown, like in the X-Ray. Linus did a video about it. Like I did an analysis of it at the review. I don't know, man. The FE uses a riser. There's like potential that it won't even run at Gen 5 speed. If you have the FE, you basically can't use a riser cable with it at all. Otherwise, you're definitely not going to get Gen 5 speed out of it. Even with a Gen 5 riser. So, there's a lot of, like, negative things about that card. So I'm just curious. Oh, you had a tough OC? Okay, well, the tough OC is kind of, you know, that's like a standard 4090. I still don't understand the reason for getting the FE and selling a 4090. Like, are you gaming at 4K? I hope you're gaming at 4K. Otherwise, I don't know why going through, like, what was the exercise in going through all that effort to get the FE and getting rid of a 4090, which is like for 1440p, the 4090 is actually better. It's quieter, it's way less electricity. There's a lot of advantages the 4090 has for 1440p gaming over the 5090. The 5090 only makes sense for 4K and nothing else. But you already have the Astral, so you probably already know that. Okay, so you're gaming at 4K. Well, I assume you were, because you already have the Astral. You know, I don't know. I mean, the one thing that I can think of that the FE is good for, so one of the redeeming things about the 5090 FE is that it's dual slot. So if you're putting it in a Threadripper system, it makes a lot of sense. For a Threadripper system, it makes a lot of sense because you would put it in Threadripper and you'd still be able to put in other GPUs. Now, where it doesn't make sense in Threadripper is if you're going to run a whole bunch of like add-in cards and stuff like underneath the GPU to the point where it would literally block all the airflow and the 5090 would overheat because you have all these other things underneath it. So that's why a blower style 2-slot design is better for that scenario. So yeah, I don't know, to be honest, like the 5090 FE is something that I personally don't recommend. So, and I'm going on a limb here trying to figure out what is a useful, like what is a actual advantage that it has. The dual slot does have an advantage if you're putting it in a Threadripper, but like I just said, if you're going to jam-pack that Threadripper system with a whole bunch of things like multiple graphics cards, the 5090 is going to be starved for air, the FE that is, because it doesn't have a blower-style design. So, let's put it this way. There's a reason why, if you guys watched Gamers Nexus, like, excellent documentary video that they did on the GPU, quote-unquote, black market GPU in Asia, that it's like a 3.5 hour video that they did. It was an amazing video. There's a reason why the standard design that they use in China when they retrofit the 4090s and 5090s into these custom PCBs are all blower style designs. There's a reason why they're blower style. would I choose to game on a 4K at 60 or an OLED at 1440 with... I mean, this is kind of a dumb question because I wouldn't game at 4K 60 refresh. So that, like, this isn't even a fair comparison. I mean, okay. Like, if we're talking Elden Ring Night Rain is capped at 60 frames per second always anyway. So 4K 60 would win in that scenario. So probably 4K 60 then would be the answer. As someone who uses 4K on a daily basis, like, I use 4K all the time. I use 4K when we're live streaming right now. We're live streaming at 4K right now. I use 4K for work. I use 4K for editing videos. I literally game on 4K all the time. Like, I can't imagine going back to 1440p. So the answer to your question is 4K 60. Like, I just can't see myself going back to 1440p. 1440p feels so 5 years ago to me. I mean, I made the jump to 4K in 2022. So I have been in the 4K world for 3 years. It was August 2022. I'll never forget, because when I got 4K, I went to 4K, and I remember that was when Genshin Impact brought out the Sumeru content. And Sumeru, the jungle of Sumeru in 4K looked so sharp, and the colors of the IPS panel looked so good. I just knew I couldn't go back. I could not go back. And that was on a 27-inch 4K. And I was like, man, 27-inch 4K seems way too big. That's way too big. Because I was so used to 24-inch 1440p. So when I experienced that at 4K, I was like, I can never go back, man. It's just too good. It's too good. Those who say otherwise have not experienced 4K. The fact that 4K is where, like, all content streaming and media and everything is going, it just makes sense. Like, that is the forefront of the enthusiast experience, I'll say. To me, 1440p only makes sense if you're on a 24-inch monitor. And especially if we're talking like OLED, because the problem with OLED does not have a standard pixel arrangement. So if you're going to read stuff on your monitor and you have an OLED, 4K makes the most sense because 4K has such a high pixel density that the negative drawback of OLED's non-standard pixel arrangement is a non-issue at 4K resolution, but it is a problem at 1440p. So is that not in the description of this live stream? I don't like how YouTube changed the thing. It's hard for me to look. Oh, it's not. I still have the Threadripper stuff in here. I forgot to change it back to the normal live stream description. I've got all the Threadripper things in here. So no, the monitor is in my other description. You have a 48 inch OLED 4K. Okay. The Asus. I mean, I guess like the problem with those monitors is they're 1440p, so it's like none of those monitors interest me. I could care less about the refresh rate. If it's not 4K, it just doesn't really appeal to me at all. Like it's like step one is be a 4K monitor. If it's not even at 4K, like I just kind of ignore it. We'll talk about refresh once it hits like the first criteria. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a list, there's a priority list. It's like first priority is resolution. I guess the other one would be like screen size. It has to hit those two check marks first. If the third one would be refresh. Refresh is good, but I don't think refresh is like the most important thing. I mean, but it depends on what you're doing with your computer. Like I use my computer, most of the time I use my monitor for work. Like, so it's like, I don't care what the refresh rate, like once the refresh goes above 120, 240 hertz, it's kind of irrelevant if you're sitting there just reading stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? So it's like, okay. Dual mode. Yeah, is that an LG monitor? What is this monitor that you're talking about? What is this thing? Hold on, I gotta find the PG27AQWPW. This thing. I know MSI also announced a bunch of monitors. Is this... this is an LG. Okay. This is basically like the monitor that I already have, except mine is a 4K 32-inch panel. Remember the one that has, I have the one with the button that does the 480 hertz mode also. So, yeah, this is like a cut down variant of that. I don't know, to me, 27 inch is too big for 1440p. So there's two things that are like really bad regarding this monitor. One, it's 27 inch. Well, they do say 26.5. It doesn't matter. It's still it's too big. The monitor is just straight up too big for this resolution. This just doesn't look good. So there's two problems. Although I will say 27 inch OLED shouldn't be that bad for 1440, but the problem is like the reading is not gonna be that good because it's 1440p at 27 inches and it's OLED, which means it's a non-standard pixel arrangement, which means that the text on the screen is going to look blurry if you're like looking at it, if you're trying to read. So that means that for some people, there is a small number of people that will get eye strain from reading stuff, like literally reading this article about this product. They could get eye strain from this because the text will appear blurry to them. The pixels when reading are very noticeable. Yeah, they are. Exactly. And this is the reason why this is a complete fail. Because the monitor is too big. Physically, it's too big for 1440p. And the fact that it's OLED makes it even worse. So this to me is like a complete skip. This could be 1,000 hertz. It's a complete fail. It's a complete fail. Like, in order for this to make sense, okay, this is some feedback for Asus and their product management team. Like, if they want someone like me to buy this monitor, they need to make this a 24-inch. At 24-inch, at 23.8, so instead of 26.5, make it 3 inches smaller. Make this panel 3 inches smaller. At 24 inches, the problem with text and legibility on an OLED at 1440 will go away, and it'll be totally fine. It'll be totally fine. At 24 inches. At 27 inches, this is a total fail, skip. Complete skip. It has to be 24-inch, 1440p, same specs, 480 hertz, whatever, I don't care. High refresh, I get it, whatever. That thing at 24 inches will be good. At 27 inches, this is bad. So this needs to be either 4K, so that reading stuff on the screen is not going to give me a headache, or it needs to be physically smaller. So, yeah, this is... I will never buy this. I will never waste my money on this. This is like a complete waste of money, in my opinion. Now, some people might not agree. It's my opinion, and I've given my reasoning, and I'm someone who has tested lots of different screen sizes, and I also have above average vision. I want to point that out. So someone who... If you wear glasses, if you have corrective lenses... This is probably going to be even worse for you than it is for someone like me. I don't have standard 20/20 vision. I have 20/10 vision. That is the reason why I can handle 4K 27-inch at native pixel density, at native 100% window scaling. That is exactly how I'm reading the chat right now. I'm reading the chat on a 4K 27-inch monitor at 100% native DPI scaling. And the monitor is about 2 feet away from me, maybe 2.5 feet away from me. It's more than arm's length. I can reach my arm out. I can't touch the monitor. The monitor is further, so far back, I can't even reach it. But I can read on a 4K 27-inch, no problem, with no zoom in, with no scaling. But not everybody can do that, and I totally recognize that. And see, a lot of people don't think about this. You guys need to think about the full picture. If you're going to spend a ton of money on a monitor, of all things, something that you're going to be stuck with for several years, you want to make sure that you cover all your bases. It cannot just be about gaming. Okay? It cannot just be about gaming. It has to be about reading stuff. It has to be about movies, other things, not just gaming. Because the people who say, oh, I'm just going to be gaming, they're going to have buyer's remorse. They're going to remember what I told them, and they're going to be like, oh man, GTR was actually right. He actually was talking about stuff that actually makes sense. So, but again, it's personal preference. At the end of the day, it comes down to like what your eyes can tolerate. You know, like what works for me might not work for someone else. So it depends on how far away your monitor is from where you sit. It depends on your actual vision. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I don't understand how someone uses a 65-inch 4K TV as a computer monitor. How far away are you sitting from that screen? That is such a large screen. Your OLED is 26.5 inches at 1440. Well, that's basically what this is, isn't it? You have 4K, but it's 65 inches. Yeah. The severely overpriced. That's a TV, isn't it? No, I'll tell you guys. I'll tell you what I personally use. For those that are wondering, people are probably wondering what am I personally using right now. So I can tell you what I'm using. Let's do Paint. because people like paint. So let me go and do this. Let me delete all these motherboard stuff. So this is what I'm using. So literally right now for the live stream, and for those of you that are members of the channel, you guys have already seen the behind the scenes footage, so you guys already know what my setup looks like. But for the non-members or the viewers that are just tuning in, so this is what I'm using. So we have a monitor here, and we have a monitor here, and we have a monitor here. Yes, triple. The secret is triple monitors. Triple monitors. That's the answer. This is what I am personally using. So what do we have over here? We have 24-inch 1440p 144 hertz. These are known as the secret monitors. I've had people that are more interested in this than the actual middle monitor. So we have that, and we have a twin on the other side. This is the secret. The secret to 1440p is to use a 24-inch 1440p. That's the secret. So that is the way. 24 inches 1440 is the secret technique. All right, in the middle, we have 27-inch 2160p, aka 4K 144 hertz. So all three displays have the exact same refresh rate. They're all 144 hertz. So you guys probably, those of you that are watching my content, you guys already know what this middle monitor is. You probably forgot what the 24-inch, but the 27-inch 4K is known as the Sony InZone. It's their gaming monitor, the Sony InZone M9. This is the 4K monitor that I am literally using to read the chat right now. And the monitor that is featuring paint. So you guys notice I always, when I'm talking about paint, I always tilt my head this way. That's because I'm looking at the left monitor. So we have paint literally full screened on this monitor. We have the YouTube chat in a browser here, and we have like OBS and some other stuff on the middle monitor. This is why 4K is where it's at, because you have screen real estate. You can fit many windows on the screen. So anyway, 1440p. This is, I don't know if I want to reveal these monitors, because these are the monitors that everyone always asks me about. The secret monitors. So this monitor, I got this monitor in August 2022. That was when I got this. So I made the jump to, this is my very first 4K monitor. I made the jump to the 4K era literally 3 years ago. So I have been on 4K for 3 years now. Well, that's why I don't really want to reveal it, because I know you guys can't get it new anymore. So but for those that are curious, those that want to know what this is known as the AOC Agon. I gotta actually look, because it's got a weird number. AG241QX. This. And I got this monitor. When did I get this monitor? It was like July of 2017. July of 2017. This is when, that was the year I made the jump to 1440p. Prior to that, I was on 1080p. This is the reason why I tell you guys I'm not that interested in 1440p. Because to me, 1440p feels so long ago. This was Final Fantasy Stormblood, the second expansion. That's what made me make the jump to 1440p. And so that is identical. So we have 2 of those. This is what I use personally. Yeah, it's a dinosaur monitor. Yeah. But this is why I tell you guys, if you're going to buy a monitor, if you're in the market for a monitor, you want to do a lot of research because you are going to be with that monitor for who knows how long. And I don't have any plans to get rid of these old 1440p 27-inch monitors because these are the most ideal screen size for 1440p for people with natural 20/20 vision. This has been proven mathematically by researchers. That is why I'll probably keep these monitors longer than I keep the Sony InZone M9. Meaning I will keep upgrading my middle monitor to like an OLED or something, but I'm going to keep my side monitors. There's no reason for me to get rid of my side monitors. They're so good. Those are my workhorse. These are known as TN panels. TN. This one is called IPS, and this is TN. So I have TN gamer monitors from 2017 on the left and the right-hand side. It's a monitor marriage. That's what I'm saying, guys. You guys got to keep those monitors long-term. I ascended beyond super. Well, I mean, I'm serious though. Like, if you use 4K for the first time, you experience like the clarity of 4K, the fact that you can fit so many things on the screen all at once. You don't have to resize things because everything just kind of like fits in there. It's all there in front of you. The screen real estate benefit of 4K for productivity is so good. Anyone who edits videos, anyone who does anything with content creation, they know exactly what I'm saying when I mention the screen real estate. Like how much stuff you can fit on the screen for your workflow. It's so good using 4K for productivity versus 1440p. 1440p has its places. I understand high refresh gaming, and I totally understand those of you who don't want to upgrade your graphics card every single GPU cycle or every single GPU generation. Like, no one likes to go, unless you're, I don't know, like a tech enthusiast or whatever, or unless you're a YouTube tech channel like me. Like, you don't want to have to go from a 4090 to a 5090 to a 6090 to a 7090 every 2 years because you're on 4K and games become more demanding and ray tracing and path tracing and all this stuff at 4K is so demanding. That is, I totally understand why people prefer 1440p for simplicity because they don't want to have to upgrade their GPU every single generation because 4K is so demanding for gaming that the 1440p, we are seeing this now, where the 1440p 2 years ago, the 4090 is almost 3 years old. It'll be 3 years old in October. Let that sink in. The 4090 is going to turn middle-aged in like 2 months. It'll be 3 years old. So, even now, the 4090 is struggling with 4K native resolution. It is struggling at 4K, even though 3 years ago, 2 years ago, it was totally good for gaming at 4K for most modern titles. Fast forward almost 3 years later, 4090 is struggling. 4K gaming is bringing the 4090 to its knees. As a result, you have to utilize things like DLSS. You have to upscale. There it is, keyword. You have to upscale. You have to rely on upscale to game at 4K. So it's almost like you're actually gaming at 1440p upscale to 4K. Or you got to turn on everybody's favorite feature, frame gen. Yes, frame gen to the rescue. So you have to turn on those things with the 4090 more often now if you're somebody using a 4K monitor. So I understand why some people don't want to go to 4K because of what I just said, because they don't want to have to like upgrade or make it feel like their 4090 is garbage or old or trash. Because for 1440p, the 4090 is still very, very good at 4K gaming. So there's a reason why people stick with 1440. I get it, but like as somebody who does a lot of stuff with a computer, I'll tell you, man, 4K is, to quote The Mandalorian, 4K is the way. It is the way. I have seen the light of 4K and I cannot go back. That's just all there is to it. So, yeah, once you experience 4K, you just can't go back. It's hard to go back because you get so used to having a workflow with everything right there on one screen. It's really, really nice. And if you drop to 1440, it's like, oh, now it's like, okay, this thing's got to go over on that monitor, and I've got to resize this and shrink this down. And I can't see as much stuff in front of me all at once. So, but you guys can see, like, 24, 27, 24. This is not that bad. A triple monitor setup, in my opinion, triple monitor is ideal. Multi-monitor is the way. Because if I'm gaming, I've got the game in the middle monitor, full screen, so the game is here on the 4K screen, and then I still have, you know, like, if I'm streaming on the, like, for example, if I'm doing a gaming live stream, I've got the YouTube chat typically in a window, like, right here on the left monitor. Paint might be over here or something, or the web browser or whatever, if we're gonna, like, show something, you know, whatever. That's typically how I do things. So multi-monitor, like anyone who has been serious or somewhat serious about content creation at all, they understand very, very quickly that multi-monitor is a must. Like, multi-monitor is mandatory for content creation, for like live streaming, as an example. Like, I can't imagine like live streaming with one monitor. Like, what? If I'm playing a game, like, unless I'm playing the game in like windowed mode at like 1080p on a 4K monitor, like, I don't know. I mean, there's some people that actually do that, but I don't feel like that's ideal. Once you go 100% agree with you there. Once you go triple monitor, you can't go back. Once you go triple monitor, you cannot go back. Triple monitor is king. Triple monitor is top tier. I've been on triple monitors. When did I go to triple monitors? Oh, man. Like, more than 10 years ago. My original setup, so my first setup was, I used to have, all right, let me see. Is this about 22 inches? So my first setup was 22 inch 1080p 75 hertz. That was my first setup. Then what did I do? I got another one of these. So then I had dual. I had two. Then I got a third one. Once I witnessed what it was like to use three, I couldn't go back. Then I had like I tried to do like a fourth monitor up here. Actually, this was a TV. It was a 22-inch 1080p Vizio TV. I had it up here. I used it for a while. I remember in 2015, I used that kind of setup for a while. I remember playing Bloodborne on the upper display because it was a TV on my PS4 back in like 2015. And then I had like neck problems. I developed like neck problems because I think I was like looking up too long, like upward toward the fourth monitor. So I got rid of this. I stopped using that, and I just went back to using 3. And I've used 3 monitors ever since. You have 2 monitors, 2 old monitors, one at 720p and another one at 1080p. What should you do with them? You don't use them. What would I do with them? Well, I'll tell you what I do with my old monitors. I use them for my test bench. So you might notice that in some of my videos where I show like the BIOS and stuff with the camera, I'm using one of those old monitors. I'm using an old 22-inch 1080p monitor for that. If we go way, way back, I used to have 60 hertz. My very first monitor, my very first monitor was a 17-inch, but my first like gaming, well, no, technically that was a 17-inch. So my first like 16:9 monitor was an Asus CCFL gaming monitor. It was a 1080p 60 hertz from Asus. And this is what it was. And I got this back in when did I get this actually? 2009. It would have been like summer. We'll just say summer 2009. Summer 2009 was when I got my very first 1080p monitor. So now you guys know the history of me when it comes to like full HD to QHD to UHD. This is when I made the jump. I made the jump to 1080p in 2009. Then I made the jump to 1440p 8 years later in 2017. Then 5 years later after that, I finally made the jump to 4K. So what really held me back from going 4K was I was waiting for graphics cards to get powerful enough to handle 4K gaming. That's really what it was. Prior to that, the very first monitor I had, which actually I had to RMA it because it like broke down. It was, I guess, is this 17 inch? So 17 inch. Yeah, the very first monitor was summer 2006. Summer 2006. 17 inch 1280 by, what was the 1280 by 1024p? It was that weird, you know, you guys remember when LCDs first came out? It was that 5x4 1280 by 1024. It was one of those. It was one of those weird like 5x4 aspect ratio. This is like the first generation of, well, not the first generation, but remember when LCDs started getting affordable and people started switching over from CRT? Because this was my first LCD. My first LCD monitor was this one. A 17 inch 1040p, 1280 by 1024. Yeah, this is the thing. I remember this was the monitor that I built my very first PC with. This was part of the very first PC. 17 inch. 17 inch. I always go for the smallest screen size with the highest resolution for that ultra crisp. Let me see if I can find that monitor. Tyrus 17-inch 1280 1024. Yeah, it's too old. Tyrus 17-inch active matrix TFT. No, it was 8 milliseconds. Mine was 8 milliseconds. Like, I remember the refresh rate. This was 8 ms. This was it was 2 ms G to G, gray to gray. Or actually realistically it was more like 5 milliseconds. That one. And then the TN, this is a true gamer's monitor. This one was, I think, like 2 millisecond gray to gray. The InZone M9 has worse. Slightly, IPS is slightly worse than TN. This is probably like 5 ms or something. I don't know. Actually, no, because this is a 144 hertz. It's hard to say on these higher refresh monitors. Refresh rate on the higher refresh is always kind of weird. It's kind of hard to compare to the old. These are like 60 hertz. This is all 60 hertz. These are 60 hertz panels. I remember, so this makes me think of the games. Like, this was WoW, Guild Wars, Half-Life 2, StarCraft, Brood War, Warcraft 3, you know, we'll just say The Frozen Throne, you know, like that. Those are the type of games back in the day. Age of Empires 2. Those are the type of games that I was playing on this back in the day. Those are the sort of games that I played on the very first computer that I built in 2006. This one, what was I playing in this era? It was 2009. StarCraft 2 was 2010. But I would end up playing StarCraft 2 on this. So StarCraft 2 was on here. What was I playing on PC at this time frame? There was that one game, like Vindictus or something. Vindictus. I played that for a while. That was like a Korean MMO. It was like a free-to-play, like almost like a battle. What do they call those type of games? Like a battle, dungeon crawler style, whatever game. I don't remember exactly. I played that for a while. StarCraft 2. I was not really into World of Warcraft at this point. I'm trying to think what else. I was very much a console gamer, like in this PS3, when PS3 started taking off, like Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, Ninja Gaiden Sigma, Valkyria Chronicles, Metal Gear Solid 4, Uncharted 2. You know, the PlayStation 3 console gaming was like really, really good in the end of the the 2000s decade. It was really strong. Because yeah, like most of the games, I'm trying to think, like, what was I actually playing on PC besides like StarCraft 2, and that was technically 2010. I would go in and out of World of Warcraft. Like I would play World of Warcraft, then I would unsub and quit for a long time, and then I would go back. But I never played Cataclysm, so like I don't really know. I guess I stopped playing Guild Wars. There were no like major live service games back in the day. So I don't know. I was mostly console gaming, I would say. Like, I would use this monitor with the PlayStation 3 because this monitor had an HDMI port. So I'd plug the PlayStation 3 into the HDMI and I would plug my graphics card into the DVI on this thing. This was DVI and HDMI, and I think it also, I don't know if it had D-sub on there, but it was definitely DVI for PC, and it did not have DisplayPort. My first DisplayPort was a 22-inch 1080p 75 hertz monitor that had FreeSync capability. And I got that like later on. Command & Conquer. I did not play Command & Conquer. I'm trying to remember what else I played though. Like, I didn't even really play that much Vindictus either. I wasn't really that into that game. I just remember that was a game that I remember from like this time period. Oh, I guess League of Legends was really new. It wasn't really well established in 2009, so I don't think that counts. And I was never really that into, I guess Dota? Dota was around this. Yeah, Dota, sort of, but not real. I was never a big fan of MOBA games, but I did play it, so I guess that would count. I could have sworn there was like some other game, like an MMO or something besides World of Warcraft. I know it wasn't Guild Wars. Maybe it was Guild Wars. Maybe Guild Wars. No, I don't think so. I don't know. This was before Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2 was 2012. So I guess technically Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy 14, but yeah, I guess FF14 later, because that was like 2013 and I was still on 1080p. This was a very DX9 centric era. So I guess do you think that's actually a very good question. I do personally think 32 inches is the perfect size for 4K. It is the perfect size. Yeah, no, I agree with Jared. So for those of you that are wondering, this is what I recommend. This is my personal recommendation for screen sizes based off of the resolution. So my recommended screen size per resolution. So this is my personal preference. You don't have to follow this advice, but as someone who has used a lot of different monitors over the years, including CRT monitors prior to that 17-inch flat screen, this is what I recommend. 1080p, I recommend 22-inch. 22-inch 1080p. 1440p, I recommend 24-inch. 2160p, aka 4K, I recommend 32 inches. For most people, 32 inches is good. If you have standard 20/20 vision, 4K 32-inch is very good. It's very good. At 32 inches, you can run the Windows scaling at native 100% scaling. None of this 150%, 175%, 125% zoom in upscale. No, you don't need any of that at 32 inches. 27 inches, you can use 4K 27 inches. That's typically what I'm using right now. But I think that for most people, 27 inches can induce eye strain unless you have strong vision. If your eyes are very good, you can get away with 27-inch 4K. But remember, this is 100% Windows scaling. This is 100% Windows scaling. This means we are not doing what do they call it in Windows? The DPI scaling. This is none of that. This is standard, like the PPI standard spec at 100% scale. So it's like as intended for Windows. So these are the sizes that I personally recommend. This is for standard 20/20 vision. For standard 20/20 vision, these are the physical panel sizes for the resolutions. At first, I thought 32 inches is too big, but as someone who has a 32-inch 4K OLED, it's very good. It's very good. Because at 32 inches, 4K at 32 inches is still more crisp and more dense than 1440p at 24 inches. You do the math and you'll see. Yeah, are you using corrective lenses? Like, are you wearing glasses? I assume if your vision is 2200, you're wearing glasses. But even then, you can still get eye strain. I don't recommend 27-inch for 1440p. For people with really good eyes, I actually recommend 27-inch 4K. Especially if you're considering an OLED. That's why I think these OLEDs, these 27-inch 1440 OLEDs are a complete flop in my mind because they're missing the point. Like, nobody wants to deal with an OLED if they have to read stuff on the monitor and the OLED is causing the text to look blurry or fuzzy. You know what I mean? 4K fixes that because 4K is so dense that you won't notice the problem. So what I don't understand is why is it that the panel makers never figured out, they never like looked at the research, they never did the math, and they never determined that the proper, well, they did once upon a time. There used to be a lot of 24-inch 1440, but it's like everyone somehow went to 27 inches for some reason. I don't know why, because like that's not how the math works. But maybe a lot of people have bad vision or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the deal is there. Windows was recommending an auto setting of 400% on one of the 4K monitors. It was, if you have the monitor plugged in HDMI, Windows probably wants to do that. Because it thinks you have a TV. It thinks you have a giant TV or something. I don't know what it's doing, but yeah, it's probably, it thinks you have a giant TV. ITX, you're gonna want to look at the Gigabyte X870. Asus does have one or two, but they're very expensive. So for ITX, I typically direct people to Gigabyte, maybe ASRock, but I don't really know what ASRock has for ITX. I think they had one, but I don't know if they still make it. Gigabyte X870 ITX. Yeah, the Aorus Pro. So something like this. I don't know if you care if it's a white or black motherboard, but something like this probably. It only needs to be single chipset, so it would be X870. This would be good. Asus does have one also. I can't remember the name. I think it's a Strix motherboard. Yeah, the Strix. This one. Yeah, here's another one. The Asus ones tend to be really expensive, though, considering it's a small motherboard. But you'd have to compare the prices. The Strix or the Pro, the Aorus Pro. I could be wrong, but I think the Gigabyte one costs less money and is equivalent in feature set. But yeah, look at this or this Strix for ITX. We don't really do too much ITX coverage on the channel, but these are the ones that I remember when I looked at them last year. And these, if I remember them, that means that they were good. Because I know ASRock had one, and I don't know if I recommend that one over these. Because I didn't like the placement on some of the stuff for the SATA. So like with this one, the thing about the Asus Strix is it uses this special little like daughter board that sticks up to provide SATA, whereas Gigabyte is doing everything like physically on the board. So you don't have to deal with an extra point of failure like you do on this Asus Strix. Doesn't necessarily mean the Strix is bad, but it just means that there's more complexity with the Strix because it has this daughter board here to keep track of. Sometimes they put an M.2 on the back, but I don't see them do that anymore. Usually they might do that if it's like a BTF board. Yeah, so this one's got no optical audio. Does this have optical audio? This doesn't have optical audio either. In fact, where is the audio on this? This doesn't even have audio. Is it on the daughter board? Okay, the Asus board is kind of weird. You don't even have 3.5-inch analog audio on here. So, I thought it had it. I remember seeing... Oh, well, maybe I'm thinking of the ASRock one. Yeah, for simplicity, the Gigabyte one is probably preferred. It's probably cheaper, and if you're going to use analog audio, like an actual 3.5-inch headset for line out and microphone, the Gigabyte is probably the way to go. The Asus one's, that's kind of weird. Like, where's the... Oh, is it on this thing? Oh, it's on this. Is it? But see, that's another, like, doodad random thing that you got to keep track of. So, I don't know. If you like that stuff, maybe Asus, but I would consider the price point. I'm pretty sure the Gigabyte's cheaper. And when I think ITX build, I think, like, you want to stay under a certain budget if you're building a small form factor. I don't expect to spend a ton of money on a small form factor build. There could be an MSI one, you're right. In fact, I think I remember seeing one. I think the region outside of North America is also getting access to mPower in a few months from MSI. So that means MSI is really trying to push into the European market. Assuming the EU gets the mPower as a SKU. I know the Asian market is going to get it. I don't know about... I think North America might not get it. So, but we'll see. We'll know in a month from now how the MSI motherboards will go based off of the regions. But yeah, going back to this is what I recommend, guys, because I know, like, I'm someone who has used 27-inch 4K. I've looked at 27-inch 1440p, and I decided not to buy it because I didn't like the way it looked. And OLED is even worse because OLED will just look blurry if you're trying to read something on a website at 1440p resolution on that large screen. That's why 1440p needs to be 24 inches for it to actually make sense, especially on an OLED. They could be labeling it as part of Max boards. Oh, probably. Well, if they didn't have one, they probably might not, but I think... I don't know. I think MSI wants to put out a 2-DIMM overclocker motherboard. If it's ITX, I don't know what it's going to be called, but if they put out a standard ATX with 2 DIMMs for AMD, it's probably going to be called mPower. So Dell did make a 4K 24-inch, but I think that's too much. That's too much pixel density for a small screen size. The problem today is when I look at 1080p monitors, they're all too big. They're all 24 inches, which is too big because now it's like, I mean, it's usable, but I don't think it's ideal. Especially if you want to run multiple, because now it's like 24, triple 24 is at a 1080p screen is not that good. It takes up a lot of space and it's not that high resolution. But 1440 24 makes a lot of sense. Like that one, this actually makes the most sense. Even more than this. But this is totally usable for most people. So, alright guys, well that's probably going to be it for this episode of Tech Thursdays. This was the Gamescom edition. Yeah, we're in the second half. We're kind of like in the middle of Q3, and as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to gaming, there's going to be a lot of games next month. And then there's going to be, like, for me personally, there's, like, 2 or 3 games in October. And then that's pretty much it. So we may do a lot of, like, computer hardware stuff at the end of the year in Q4. Possibly. I thought M-Power... Yeah, maybe. I don't know if it's M-ATX or if it's full ATX. 45 inch is not a monitor. That's a TV, isn't it? Wait, 1440p? Yeah, if it's 1440p and it's 45 inches and it's a monitor, then that is pretty much trash. I hate to break it to you, but that's something that I personally would never use. I mean, if it works for you, it's totally fine, but that would definitely not work for me. So the next stream will be the first week of September. So the 4th. So there will be no Tech Thursdays next week. But there will be one. Oh, it's ultra wide? Then that's probably why it's that big. Yeah, I don't like ultra wide. I'm not a fan of ultra wide. I don't like 21:9 or that other ultra wide. There's like 2 ultra wide aspect ratios. I don't like either one. It's just because it's like the thing with ultra wide is I would rather have 3 monitors individually that I control separately versus one big ultra wide screen. I just don't like ultra wide because I like having the segmentation provided from the 3 monitors. So I mean, okay, you ultra wide, whatever works for you, pal. Like what works for someone might not work for another person. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, I don't think ultra wide's cool. I think triple monitor is cool. But whatever works. You don't do ITX either? Wait, what? You don't get the point of MATX is barely smaller than ATX? You lose so much expandability. Yeah. Why can't you reformat it to FAT32? I don't understand. Just format it to FAT32 or EXFAT or something. I don't know what all this stuff is about. What is this? CVS, ATX? What is that? I don't know. MATX, affordability. I guess, but I don't understand. I kind of agree with the idea that MATX sacrifices a lot of expandability versus standard ATX. If your case can fit a standard ATX, why would you even bother with MATX? But oftentimes what I see people do, or what I see like marketing do for MATX, is they show MATX in a tower, in a case that can fit on an ATX board. Like, why? What? Why? Why would you get MATX for a tower case that can fit a full ATX case? It doesn't make any sense. ITX is always shown off in small form factor, but MATX is always oftentimes shown off in a case that could fit an ATX. Why? I have no idea. Your MATX is in ITX. Okay, well, yeah. I don't know, but I'm not the right person to ask for small form factor because I'm not a huge fan of small form factor. I was thinking the other day, I will never buy a case that doesn't have 8 slots at the back, meaning it has to be full tower, or it has to be a mid tower that can get away being a full tower. So it has to have all the capabilities. I don't know. I just don't see the point of small form factor. Like, maybe it depends on the lifestyle. If somebody is living like a nomadic lifestyle, if they're on the move, like if they're living, like if you're staying in a foreign country for, a couple of months or whatever, maybe a small form factor makes sense. But personally, if I was in that sort of scenario, I'd probably just use a laptop Not a gaming laptop, just an actual workstation laptop. Because that to me is far more practical than a small form factor PC. I don't know. Like, I just don't understand small form factor. They look cool. I just don't see the point. But again, I'm a power user. I'm someone who uses the computer to do a whole bunch of things. I have to have my 2 graphics cards in one computer. I have to have like all the hard drives. I gotta have all the storage. I gotta have all the M.2 drives all populated in all the slots. Everything's gotta be fully loaded. You know what I'm saying? So that's a power user. I use all that hardware for work and stuff. Like, I can't just have a small form factor. I don't have enough drives. I don't have enough storage. I don't have enough graphics cards. Like, it's not going to work. MATX doesn't work. ITX doesn't work. It's got to have all the stuff. So, I don't know. But I've been there. I know what that's like. I know what that's like, where you don't need a desktop because it's that nomadic style. Limited space. Yeah, there you go. Small form factor is a handheld for you. Small form factor me is a workstation laptop. A ThinkPad laptop is a small form factor PC. Anyway, that's going to be it for this stream. There is no Tech Thursdays next week. So, just so that everybody's aware, there is no episode next week. We will be back on September 4th. So that means this is the last episode of August. So, and it takes place during Gamescom. So yeah, we'll be back on the 4th. Thanks for tuning in, guys. There will be no live stream this weekend, just so you guys know. So there's no gaming live stream. There's no Tech Thursdays next week. We'll be back on the 4th, like I said. There may be a gaming live... Well, okay. There is no live stream this weekend. But there will probably be... Most likely, there will be a live stream next weekend, before the next episode of Tech Thursday. So stay tuned for that. For those of you playing Elden Ring Night Rain, hopefully you guys managed to clear Libra. Libra Extreme was exceptionally hard for most people. I managed to clear it a few days ago. It was not easy. And I already cleared the 3-headed dog. The 3-headed dog, I got him on the second try with randoms. I was playing as Raider, so that one was not too bad. But that one is still... That one is quite challenging. I like what they did. But yeah, we will probably back, depending on what they have. Probably not Night Rain. I'm trying to think like what I will do for the gaming live stream. Because as far as I know, the final boss is not going to have his Everdark form until later. So if there's a Monster Hunter thing going on, maybe I'll do that. Oh, there is a crossover. So the Monster Hunter there's a crossover with Monster Hunter Wilds and Final Fantasy 14. I don't know when that... I think that's actually... No, I think that's not going to be next weekend. I think that's like further down in September. But yeah, we will definitely be covering that. We'll cover that for both games, both Final Fantasy and Monster Hunter, because Monster Hunter will get some Final Fantasy stuff in the game, and Final Fantasy will get something from Monster Hunter in the game. So I will be covering both games. So if you want to tune into that, stay tuned for that. But that's probably something that's happening like a month from now. And then we'll be looking at motherboards and stuff like that later in September, once they get out to market and things like that. So thanks all for tuning in, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks, for those of you that tune into Tech Thursdays.